Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am. How are you? Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the the Lakewood City Council agenda for this Monday, September 15, 2025. Madam Clerk, if you'd please call the roll.
Councilmember Bell. Here. Councilmember Bowlby.
He's arriving.
Setter.
Here. Here. Here.
Here.
Present. Thank you very much. Now, if you'd please stand and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance to our nation's flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, thanks again and welcome all of you who are here. We appreciate your attendance, and those of you who are observing and attending virtually, we also appreciate having you on board. Tonight's meeting goes right into the public comment section. We have no proclamations or presentations this evening. Public comment is accepted by mail, email, or live virtual or in-person comment. Comments may be submitted in advance by mail or email to our city clerk, Ms. Brianna Schumacher, at bschumacher@cityoflakewood.us or mailed in at 6000 Main Street Southwest here in Lakewood. Comments received up to an hour before the meeting have been provided to the council electronically. And for the purpose of keeping a transparent record, the clerk will read the names of those who have submitted written comments in advance.
Mayor, we received written comments in advance from Preet Samra.
Thank you. Members of the audience may comment on matters pertaining to city business under the public comment period. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. We simply ask that you approach the podium, state your name and residence of record, and you'll have your 3 minutes. Virtual comments are also authorized. If you'd like to provide live virtual public comment, please join us in the Zoom room as an attendee by calling the telephone number 253-215-8782. Enter the meeting ID number 868-7263-2373. Once you're in the room, please use the raise the hand feature to be called upon, and we'll make sure to include you in tonight's public comment section. So what I usually do is start with those who have signed in, and then I'll turn to those who are here virtually. So the first to sign in, we've got Jürgen Huck. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Jürgen Huck. I'm a 55-year resident of Lakewood with my wife, and we raised our 2 sons here and many dogs. And Fort Steilacoom Park has always been a major part of our life, so our socialization, our health, and we've enjoyed all the amenities that have been available. From markets, the outdoor music concerts, and beautiful walks around Wahab Lake. What's been missing, though, is an indoor facility that can take care of the needs of the community. And for instance, a nice way to have a place where we could have weddings, where we could have a family reunions indoors when the weather isn't so nice. And right now they have to be held outdoors. Well, the H barns answer that question. If we can restore them to their past glory, not only do we do a historical service for the community, but we would provide amenities that the community can use. And we could have arts and crafts in there. We could have senior citizen, or, it's just a wonderful facility. And it has a great historical significance. So I think the H barns would be kind of the jewel in the crown of Fort Steilacoom Park.
Thank you. Next, Ellen Carr.
My name is Ellen Carr. I am a lifelong resident of Lakewood, a little over 40 years. I also am the owner of Carr's Restaurant, who we also are a catering company. And I fully believe that Lakewood is in a major deficit of indoor venue space. As someone who works in the events industry, celebrating milestones, weddings, birthdays, anniversaries, new babies, I really feel like our city is lacking in places to accommodate those milestone celebrations. I am asked all the time, where can we meet? Where can we have these? And most of the time, we have to look outside our city, and I don't think we should. I'm also a parent of school-age children, and we use the park quite frequently. Baseball, soccer, big toys, all of those things. They love the market, and having indoor space where we could see those markets maybe happen year-round and see other special events would be amazing. And even looking to activities for a senior center or things like that. It would be a great benefit to our city in many ways. So I am here to also voice my support for that. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. Next, Hallie McCurry.
Good evening. Thanks for letting me address council. I have a few points I want to talk about surrounding the H Barn. I'm representing Partners for Parks tonight. We've already raised $2.8 million towards our $3.5 million goal, and we continue to raise funds until we reach our goal. There are no other Lakewood public projects that have received this much financial support from the community, to include citizens, businesses, and foundations. Not a single one. Partners for Parks has financially supported many Lakewood projects, and after completing the council-supported H-Barn feasibility studies, we've had open houses, community conversations. We've never heard such positive feedback about a project and that we have supported. We've done many projects. We did the trail around Wahop Lake. In fact, we didn't hear all positive comments about that, right? We've done the bathroom project. We have a history of actually accomplishing our goals and making things happen. And so we want to do that here with the H-Barn as well. This project meets multiple city council goals to include preserving our local history, creating a multi-use and multi-generational facility, and generating positive impacts to our local economy. When complete, the H-Barn facility will fill many gaps in service. It'll meet the diverse community needs. It'll serve youth, adults, senior citizens, and families. Restoring the iconic barn will create a highly desirable year-round indoor space, grow local, regional, and statewide tourism, which will generate revenue to offset operations and create a positive economic impact supporting local businesses in Lakewood. Completing this project will pave the way for Partners for Parks to support additional council projects, such as a downtown park and some of the things that I know are on your list of things that you would like to accomplish. We want to be here as a group to support you for future projects as well, but we do have to get this one complete and under our belt. So in case you forgot all of the points that I've said, I have a nice little show and to you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Hallie. Next, Dean Burke.
All right, good evening. Thank you for your time this evening. My name is Dean Burke. I'm here representing two hats. I'm on the Lakewood LTAC Committee and Lodging Tax Committee, and I'm also the president and CEO of Visit Tacoma Pierce County, and here to speak to the renovations of H-Barn as well. Adding to what has been said tonight so well already, I'm bringing amplified focus on this from the perspective of tourism as it impacts this. I'm extremely excited about this opportunity. As it pertains to the LTAC committee, I think the funds that have been voted on to go toward that are an excellent use for this. This is exactly what we want to see. And a project like this adds to distinguishing Lakewood. Barns like this don't happen everywhere all the time, and so they are unique, and they bring a character that you cannot replicate through, basic engineering and design. It really takes something unique like this. They are recognizable and they create a signature gathering space that that this town can be proud of. They expand host capacity, which is really important. This isn't just redistributing existing things. This is adding capacity to a park that already does such a great job. We've worked with you all as a partnership to bring some amazing products and events and festivals to that park, and this only bolsters that. It drives new demand from weekday rentals to markets to private partnerships, community celebrations, et cetera. It creates new reasons to gather and visit. And probably for those of us that are maybe more business minded on things, sometimes with as regard to parks, this is a revenue generator as well. And one that because of the uniqueness of these barns and what they could become, I think becomes even a competitive revenue generator because you will be able to set standards for how you, I think you're going to have more people applying to use this than you can fit basically. So you can kind of raise the bar as to how things are done. So just here to support this tonight. And thanks for all the work you've done so far.
Thank you very much. Next, Linda Smith.
Good evening. Mayor and council members, thank you for having us this evening. My name is Linda Smith, and I am a longtime resident as well. 60 plus years, I believe. I know. I also represent the Lakewood Chamber of Commerce, and I also serve on the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. I'm here to talk about the H Barn, which is more than just a building, as we all know. It's part of Lakewood's history. With the right vision, it can also be part of our economic future. At our recent Lodging Tax Advisory Committee meeting, we reviewed a request from city staff to use lodging tax dollars to help rebuild the H Barn at Fort Steilacoom Park. These capital funds of the lodging tax are set aside specifically for city-owned buildings that support tourism, and the H Barn clearly qualifies. And the committee was quite excited to be able to have a discussion about this. As you know, the intent of lodging tax dollars is to generate heads and beds, to drive overnight stays that strengthen our local economy. While the H Barn will serve as a wonderful community gathering space, it also has the potential to do so much more. With thoughtful programming, it can become a destination venue that attracts weddings, conferences, cultural festivals, and other large-scale events that bring visitors from across the region, as well as the nation. For that reason, the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee recommends approving funding with one important condition: that a percentage of available dates be set aside and marketed specifically for regional and national events. By doing so, the H Barn won't just serve local needs, it will also maximize the tourism, fill hotel rooms, and ultimately generate additional lodging tax revenue to reinvest into our city. This is a win-win for Lakewood. Our community gains a revitalized historic building, and our visitor economy gains a powerful new tool to grow and thrive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's the last individual who is signed in on the sign-in sheet, but as I often say, let that not deter you. If you would like to address and provide public comment to the council tonight on any matter pertaining to city business, now's the time. So I'm just double checking before I turn to anyone who might be appearing virtually. All right, seeing no others here in the audience. Madam Clerk, we have a few with virtual hands raised. I'll look at my monitor here as well. Looks like we have two. The first is Christina Minetti.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hello, everybody. Good evening, Council. This is Christina Minetti from the Gary Oak Coalition in Lakewood. And there are a few things related to trees and specifically to Gary Oaks that have come up in recent days that I'd like to draw your attention to. First is that at the planned, I believe it's a subdivision on Custer Road between, I think it's 88th and Dower Road. I'm not exactly sure if it's 88th. I think that's what that road is called, where you turn to go towards Stilcombe. A project board was displayed recently. For the person posting the sign on the requisite sized board, it was easier to nail the board into two adjacent trees rather than to put the posts into the ground as usual. Of course, trees are living beings, and nailing things into them obviously causes harm. So we'd like to ask that the city consult with an arborist about how best to prevent infection in these trees, or ask the property owner to have an arborist consult, and whether it is now best to remove the nails rather than leave the nails rather than to take them out, which could, of course, open the tree to more infection, or more of a chance of infection. If you look around, you can see other things nailed into trees around Lakewood, including into Gary Oaks. Unfortunately, there are advertisements. I think I saw something like yard work or something. There are mailboxes. There are security lights and insect traps. For example, of course, the insect traps are small, so I hope that the nails aren't very big, but there are sizable things nailed into trees around here. And in other jurisdictions, such as Pierce County, the nailing of things into trees is prohibited. So, we recommend that Lakewood also prohibit the banning of nails into trees. Um, trees are not telephone poles after all. They are alive, like you and me. So it's time to take the health of Lakewood's trees seriously and to inform residents about what is necessary to keep our trees healthy. And I have a second comment from myself as well. This is Christina Minetti, resident of Lakewood. First of all, I would like to put in my 2 cents, as I say, about the 7.5 million original dollars that were already too much for the H barn. I can't remember what the original amount was, but it seems to have gone up considerably. The H barn is not something that would be used on a daily basis, and wouldn't it just be more beneficial to cut your losses and spend it, for example, on that elusive youth and senior center that people keep talking about? And I am very, very fond of old buildings. As you probably know, I used to be on LHAB until it was liquidated, and I'm a historian by training. So live in an old house, had old apartments in Europe. So it's not that I'm not fond of old buildings, but that building, I mean, you wonder, is it really worth doing what people are planning on doing with it? I mean, I'm just not sure about that. I also have a few thoughts related to Gary Oaks. Mr. Brandstetter recently, last Thursday, told me that a property owner here in my neighborhood, I think if I understood him correctly, he told me that this property owner will be required to remove the pavement on the driveway that had been put over the critical root zones of 3 Gary Oaks. The city found out about this, I think, last month. Maybe it was already July, I'm not sure. So while this is good news, of course, obviously it's really good news, but better would be to, of course, tell the property owners beforehand. I mean, maybe somebody told them, but it seems to me that there's not really that public education that the city says it will have in its code. I mean, this is in the code as far as I remember. This really highlights the need to inform property owners before they pave over things, before they cut them down, before they mutilate them and other things. You have to really inform them about the value of the oaks and the need to protect them. So Lakewood City Code mentions that there will be this public education, but I mean, as far as I know, I don't know. I've never seen any public education taking part, and I've run into people who don't even know that it's Gary Oak in their yard. I, for example, have 4 of them, and I have never received anything. Not even when I was a new owner of this property, did I find anything sent by the city or approached by the city. So I think really public education is the way to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, James Dunlop.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is James Dunlop and I'm a resident of Lakewood. I'd first of all like to question, this new practice of sort of alternating your meetings, some starting at 6 o'clock, others starting at 7 o'clock. I think this is kind of quite disorientating. I know that as sort of city council members, you've got good reasons for doing it. But, for example, as far as public comments are concerned, if people want to make public comments, it's very difficult to know or remember when is the city council meeting. Is it at 6 o'clock or is it at 7 o'clock? I would suggest that you decide which one you go for. You're going to go for 6, you're going to go for 7. So that's just my suggestion. My second comment, I want to sort of pick up on what Christina Monetti was saying about H-barns, the H-barn. I mean, I've sort of noticed that listening to city council meetings, there is this obsession with H-barn. You keep talking about it, you keep talking about the grants, and you talk about Lakewood's heritage and so forth. But it strikes me that this is maybe a kind of a sort of ersatz heritage, that the city council and perhaps other interests within the city are deciding what Lakewood's history should be. You want to focus on H-barns. You don't want to focus on something else. I mean, over the last 10, 15 years, aspects of Lakewood's heritage have been destroyed. For example, the Tensler Library or the Starlight Drive-In Cinema. I mean, her drive-in cinema, that would have been something great to have had during COVID. And drive-in cinemas are incredibly rare. And from a sort of an economic perspective, you had the flea market. A lot of people really use the flea market, both as visitors and as vendors. And these aspects of Lakewood's tradition, both sort of more recent and sort of more historic, have been destroyed. And it's as if the city council and the city in general is making a decision about what parts of a city's history should be valued. You're kind of telling residents, this is Lakewood's history. And I kind of regard that as being sort of quite totalitarian. I mean, totalitarian regimes tell people about their history. You should be focusing on this and not that. And I don't think that's a particularly healthy approach. I mean, Lakewood is not North Korea. So thank you for hearing me out.
That's the last hand I see raised for virtual public comment. Any others, Madam Clerk? Very good. I'll declare the public comment period closed. We now turn to the consent agenda. Madam Clerk?
A, approval of the minutes of the city council meeting of August 18th, 2025. B, approval of the minutes of the city council meeting of September 2nd, 2025. C, approval of the minutes of the city council study session of September 8th, 2025. D, motion number 2025-63, authorizing the execution of agreement governing the allocation of funds paid by opioid manufacturers, Alvagen Inc., Amneal Pharmaceuticals, Apotex Inc., Hikma Pharmaceuticals USA Inc., Indivior Inc., Mylon Pharmaceuticals Inc., Sun Pharmaceutical Industries Inc., and Zydus Pharmaceuticals USA Inc. E, motion number 2025-64, authorizing the execution of an agreement with Vera Mobility Traffic Systems Inc. for an automated photo enforcement program. F, motion number 2025-65, authorizing the execution of an agreement with LGCS for the City Hall beam repair project. G, motion number 2025-66, appointing Elijah Steana as a youth council representative to the Lakewood Promise Advisory Board for the 2025 to 2026 school year.
Thank you very much. Is there any item which any council member wishes to remove from consent agenda consideration at this time? Mr. Brandstetter.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to, to remove item E, motion 2025-64.
Very well. Any others? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda minus item E at this time?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Pearson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Moss, that we adopt the consent agenda minus item E. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda minus item E has been adopted. We now move to motion 2025-64. Madam Clerk.
Motion number 2025-64, authorizing the execution of an agreement with Vera Mobility Traffic Systems, Inc. for an automated photo enforcement program.
Very good. And do I have a motion and a second to get this on the floor for discussion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilmember Pearson, seconded by Councilmember Laura Sella, that we adopt motion 2025-64. Discussion. Mr. Brandstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I asked that this item come off of the consent agenda for a number of reasons. But let me just preface that by saying that I am in favor of the contract that the motion would allow the city manager to enter into, to be able to go and do that. But I think that it addresses an issue that we have heard before us in public comment and in other comments recently that deserves to be highlighted. And that is, there is a great deal of concern about many in the community about the behavior of drivers. And that there's also a bit of perception that the city is not doing enough in that regard to change driver behavior and being able to go and do that. This is a revised contract with the same vendor, but a reorganized vendor, okay, who is doing to that will maintain what has been an effective tool to address driver behavior and at critical spots. It is also something that would be of value for us to be able to build on and deal with it. It highlights the fact that you don't need to have a police officer in uniform in a car to be able to deal with traffic and driver behavior. The second reason that I wanted to highlight has to do, Mr. Mayor, is before I was on the council, that in the early days of cityhood, there was a section placed in the Lakewood Municipal Code about the use of automatic traffic safety signals. And as currently written, that item of the code stipulates that only 2 intersections in the city can have red light enforcement cameras. Some time ago, under the previous contract, we moved to actually having those cameras located at a 3rd intersection, but we haven't done the housekeeping with respect to the code to make that compliant. And I would, suggest, Mr. Mayor, that at a soon council session, that we entertain an ordinance to amend the code with respect to these cameras to align it with the contract that I am hopeful that we will be approving tonight to be able to go forward. Because makes sense, and we have the code for a reason. We want to, we want to follow it, and it goes on. And it could either be modified by why the code should have a limit on the number of intersections and just remove that portion of it, or it could be to increase it to 3 as this contract would do. But given that this is a tool that may have value to expand to other intersections where accident history warrants this, then maybe the correct way to deal with the code is just remove a restriction on how many that are there, and but include authorizing them to exist and the procedures under which citations and violations detected by cameras will be processed. So I'd ask you to work towards getting such an ordinance on a future agenda.
Thank you.
But again, I would reiterate that I am going to vote in favor of the motion because I want this project to continue and upgrade our enforcement as a viable tool for addressing driver behavior.
Thank you, Mr. Brandstetter. Mr. Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A little off subject with photo enforcement, but on topic with some of the Mr. Brandstetter's comments about what the city's done and to help provide safer roads. And I think when you drive around the city now compared to 6, 8 years ago, especially some of the thoroughfares that I drive regularly, Washington Boulevard being the main one, routinely there was cars speeding down the two-way left turn lane, going 60 miles an hour, passing people left and right. And now with the roundabouts and the raised median, there's none of that. And I would say most of the time people are barely going over the speed limit because of the frequency of the roundabouts through there. So that provides a much safer road. Many of the other roundabouts that have been swapped out where intersections were, those are proven to reduce conflicts with drivers and stuff. So there's been many things that, it's not just about enforcement, it's about, design as well and what is going on there too. So that's one of the items. The other thing that I think we keep up on with safe roads or keeping people safe on roads is how well we maintain our roads. When you have poor road conditions, you're more likely to have potholes and flat tires and debris and stuff in the road that can cause issues. So many of those things I think kind of also go into that. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or comments on the motion? So what I hear Mr. Brandstetter ask or indicate is perhaps a study session down the road on what we can or can't do with the recent changes to state law that may authorize additional traffic cameras only with certain hurdles having been crossed in terms of review of locations. And there's a lot of equitable analyses that have to be done, as I understand it, but it's something that the city attorney may speak to, and we can maybe look at this at a further session down the road if necessary.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, what I hear Councilmember Brandstetter saying is he's pointing out the deficiencies in your city legal department. Because what he's saying is that we've only authorized under ordinance 2 of the arterials. Now, I won't bore you with the details of why we are probably still legislatively sound with our system that's in place. He is correct that that ought to be cleaned up, and we will endeavor to do that. Your comment about maybe going further and exploring additional cameras and what that might mean to the city manager has indicated that that's probably going to be of interest to the council. One of those items will be ready very soon. That's the simple correction that's requested by Councilmember Brandstetter. The second one may take a little more time, and we'll find an appropriate place on the agenda in keeping with what the manager's direction is on that.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Further discussion? If not, do we have all those in favor signify of motion 2025-64 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion 2025-64 has been adopted. We now move to the regular agenda ordinances. The first ordinance number 835, Madam Clerk.
Ordinance number 835, amending Lakewood Municipal Code, Chapter 3.38, related to water management.
Thank you. And for this, I'll call on our Assistant Director of Planning and Public Work, Ms. Angie Silva.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. Starting on page 122 of your packet this evening is ordinance again, number 835, which amends the chapter 3.38 as it relates to surface water management. This is scheduled for final action this evening. So in summation, on August 11th, this body received a study session on the proposed ordinance, followed by on September 2nd, a public hearing to consider any testimony related to the proposed changes. The amendments proposed are administrative and housekeeping only. No substantive policy changes are included. The amendments align with current 2025 surface water utility rates and remove outdated fee information and exemptions that have sunsetted. The ordinance continues to retain a 2.5 annual inflationary adjustment for 2026 and beyond. And further, the ordinance clarifies the desire to conduct a comprehensive rate study every 6 years to ensure adequacy of the revenues and equity of them, clarifies the use of those funds, including flood control measures as permitted by state law, and removes outdated provisions that expired and are no longer applicable. Mr. Mayor, I don't have any further overview on this item other than a department recommendation to approve ordinance 835. And I'm happy to answer any questions this body may have at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Silva. And this is an item we did review at some length during our study session, but if council members have any questions of Ms. Silva specifically related to ordinance 835 as proposed, let me know. Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve ordinance 835?
I move approval of ordinance number 835.
A second.
Been moved by Councilmember Boki, seconded by Councilmember Brandstetter, that we adopt ordinance number 835. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ordinance 835 has been adopted. We now move to ordinance number 836. Madam Clerk.
Ordinance number 836, finalize locally initiated changes to the 2019 Shoreline Master Program.
For this, we have our planning manager, Ms. Tiffany Spear.
Thank you and good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This ordinance begins, or the discussion thereof starts on page 138. And as was discussed at last week's study session, this is a slightly unusual legislative process because this is a Shoreline Master Program update where the Department of Ecology does the ultimate decision regarding language and certification. However, there were two recommended changes, and they're at pages 22 and 23 of the draft updated Shoreline Master Program that were talked about last Monday night. Happy to answer any questions, but essentially it was making sure that there was adequate reference to all of the applicable cross-referencing between our critical areas ordinance and the Shoreline Master Program.
Thank you, Ms. Spear. Any clarifying questions from council? And again, this is an item we reviewed at length during our last study session. Thank you very much for your work. Do I have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 836?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Pearson, seconded by Councilmember Bell, that we adopt ordinance 836. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of adoption signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ordinance number 836 has been adopted. That concludes the items on the regular agenda. I see no items of unfinished or new business, so we move to our study session portion of tonight's agenda. The first item is the Fort Steilacoom H-Barn Restoration and Renovation Schematic Design Update. And I believe we have our interim Parks and Recreation and Community Services Director, Mr. Scott Williams.
All right, well, good evening, Mayor Whalen, Deputy Mayor Moss, and distinguished council members. I would like to thank you for having us here tonight to present the H-Barn project. I have with me David De La Cruz, our capital projects manager on this project, and Susan Tillich from Grand Baba Architects, our consultants on this project. And I have control of it, right? There we go. The goals of the project are to celebrate the rich history of the area by restoring this 120-year-old iconic agricultural landmark into a community gathering place to be used by all for generations to come. We want to create a thriving destination space to support community programs and large and multi-day events that we know will generate tourism and economic impact in Lakewood. Lakewood was once a large area of lakes and prairies used for over 10,000 years by indigenous peoples to hunt, gather, and celebrate. The red circle on the picture indicates where the H barn is located in the area now known as Fort Steilacoom Park. Fort Steilacoom Park has a rich farming history dating back to the 1800s. In its later farming years, food was grown and raised at the site to feed the staff and patients at Western State Hospital. You can see remnants of this throughout the park, including the silos that were built in 1931. And the silos are on the backside of the H barn. They still stand today, and you can go out and read the inscriptions that were written on there in 1931. Here's what the barn looks like today. From the front view, you'll notice there's no real sense of arrival, and it's not accessible to the public. It doesn't meet any current building occupancy codes. And here's what we're looking at proposed ideas. The intent is to keep the barn looking historic, but modernized for general occupancy, supporting both public and private use. Here's a view of the back side of the barn. Notice there the silos. And with the proposed updates, this creates an outdoor terrace that flows seamlessly into the indoor venue and provides open access for all or from all sides that can be enjoyed by all when not being programmed. This shows the proposed floor plan and what it would potentially look like fully built out. There would be space for small and large gatherings. Rooms would be multifunctional, serving young and old. And to orient you council members, as you're looking at any of these slides, north is the top edge of the slide. So on there you can see the outdoor events area with the two silos kind of in the center of the picture, and the event space, classrooms, and then kind of all the things that you need to have in a building to make it function. Here's a picture of what the current conditions are of the interior. And then again, here's a rendering of how that space could be used for large events. By vaulting the ceilings, you can create the feeling of a larger space. Also notice how the glass doors open onto the terrace, providing that seamless transition I spoke of earlier. When complete, the H barn could be used for public and private events, as well as multi-generational programs, multi-day tournaments, competitions, meetings, and events. We regularly get asked by large event planners for indoor space to support the many logistical needs and uses needed for large regional events. The restored H barn, along with the various park facilities and amenities, would provide that necessary space for current programs and events, as well as become an incentive for new regional and statewide competitions, tournaments, races, trade shows, summits, conferences, and events. Fort Steilacoom is a unique regional park that for many of us is our backyard neighborhood park. While serving that community need, it is also used for a variety of regional events, bringing people from outside Lakewood to participate in things ranging from sports tournaments, farmers markets, concerts, and festivals. We are sure that when the H barn is improved, it will increase hotel stays and support local business. It will be a regional draw, bringing people into Lakewood for longer stays, generating positive economic impact in the sale of fuel, supplies, goods, and services. All right, now let's get to some of the scenarios proposed. So again, looking at this, north is the top of the slide. Scenario 1 is fully built out of the current proposed schematic design, including all features and design elements. Scenario 2, this reduces the scope of work by only including the immediate footprint of the building. So all of the exterior landscape and hardscape areas are excluded. This still provides structural upgrades to the building as in scenario 1, but it will eliminate all exterior work in the faded areas shown on the slide. It will also reduce the scope or completely remove discretionary elements within the building. These items can be retrofitted later. Scenario 3 includes all the reductions in scenario 2, but further reduces the scope of work to eliminate the south wing. Further investigation would need to be carried out to see if the old structure could be left as it is and what cost there would be to keeping it, or if it would need to be torn down. So this is a side-by-side comparison of all three different scenarios. Scenario 1, the full build-out is based on the 30% cost estimate provided by RLB as part of the design team scope of work. Scenarios 2 and 3 are based on assumptions made by staff's best efforts to remove or reduce discretionary elements from the RLB cost estimate. And the reason for that is we didn't want to spend money on further cost estimating without first having a direction in which way to go. And then here we go. So this was an event that came to the park this summer. This was a wedding, and a little backstory on it is the bride is a local Lakewood resident. She grew up coming to the park and participating in many events. And when it came time to get married, she told her family, "This is where I want to get married. This has meaning to me." So they did a reservation request. They worked with the Parks Department to have the space available. Her parents were kind of skeptical at first, but came around to the idea. The wedding actually took place out in the grass area to the west of the barn, and then they utilized this area after putting up all the decorations and kind of cleaning up the space and use this to celebrate the wedding, afterwards. Now imagine what this could be also if there was indoor space to be used as part of this event. And just numbers wise, they had about 250 folks there at their wedding. So great event. And if I'm not going to name names, but if you look carefully, you might recognize who it is. With that, I thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed seeing some of the possibilities, and we are happy to clarify anything or answer any of your questions.
Well, thank you. Well, there's about a $4 or $5 million question, but we'll get to that in a little bit. My initial question, Mr. Williams, is how firm and how did the folks come to the cost estimate from the 30% design? So how firm was that?
I'm going to defer that to Susan, if you don't mind.
That'd be great. Yeah. Welcome, Susan.
Yeah, come on up.
Hello. So we had a cost estimator, RLB, who we've worked with on many projects, who took our schematic designs, which is a 30% design documents, and estimated using their knowledge of the industry, their knowledge of current costs and trends to project what the cost would be, assuming that constructions, I think they escalated into spring or summer of 2026. And with that, always early in the design, because there are things that can change and details that get refined, they always put in an additional design contingency. So I think in this case, it was 10%. And we worked with them very closely, as we always do, going through to make sure they didn't miss anything in the design. So we feel very confident. I mean, in other projects that they've estimated for us, they've done a great job of coming in very close when we get bids. That being said, as everyone knows, things are kind of weird right now with tariffs, and it's very hard to know where things are going. But I think as far as at least that first number that Scott mentioned, the 14.3 number, we feel as confident as we could feel with any estimate. And the benefit of going with a cost estimator rather than just going out to a contractor is that a contractor often has the incentive to give a lower number to secure the project. And then, change orders come through the course of the project. And so this is somebody with a more objective viewpoint than you would have necessarily with a contractor.
The other question I have is, maybe this is a contract question, maybe for Ms. Silva, is if this were to be contracted through the city, which it likely would be, for construction, is there a bid process type that might allow for more in-kind donations, say of landscaping items or components on the exterior? Or if you do a single bid process, the lowest bid gets it all?
Right. I think probably, but I don't want to speak to that because I'm not,
So I saw Ms.
that's not
Silva
my kind of area.
jump into the microphone. She may have an answer there. And thank you for coming. And this is meant to be the study session, so it'll be a little less formal, even though we're not sitting down there with you. So feel free to have a little back and forth here.
Great question, Mr. Mayor. As part of kind of public works procurement and bidding process, you need to be very clear
Right.
on the elements that you seek contracting and the source of not source of funds, but total budget amount. So for example, if there was a desire by the city to have volunteer landscaping or some type of donation process through a 501(c), that would be separated from that bid document and be very focused on what you're seeking contractor services on. The key here is to be very clear on that bid and exactly what you seek and get bid proposals. You don't want to change it afterwards as it just costs more time and delays.
Councilmember Bell has a
Thank
question.
you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if this is where this question would apply or not, but when you are getting information, do you include the buildings being LEED certified and at what level? And is that worked into the contract?
This isn't.
When we contracted for the project, that was not included in the scope. So that would be an additional cost. That being said, the renovation of any building is one of the most sustainable things you can do, and often it kind of gives you a head start. So if that were something the city wanted to do, I think it's entirely possible. I think the mechanical system is designed, actually the Washington State mechanical code now is so advanced that you're basically getting a mechanical system that is in the LEED.
And I know that there's different levels of LEED certification.
Correct.
So that
Yeah.
would be different cost levels also.
Correct,
I would
right.
be very interested in that, and that building is LEED certified. I mean, it is in a park in an environmental space, and I think that is very important.
Agree. It'd be great if we could do that.
Something I'd like to point out on this sheet here that shows the three differences. So the green line in the middle where it says base bid. So the cost estimating that we had from RLB on the project is for the construction of the proposed at 30%. The items that you see above that are the non-construction items. So the architectural and engineering, the permitting, cultural resources, survey work, and then by owner site furnishings. Those are non-construction costs that come in. So the cost estimate for the building was right around the 12,191,000 mark for construction costs. And then these other costs are things that we have to build into the project to cover all of those additional fees. and parts of the project that aren't reflected in construction. So just wanted to kind of give you a breakdown of what those are.
Let me understand, Scott, is that 12.2 roughly, the 12.2, would that include the exterior site improvements, the full meal deal schematic in scenario 1?
Yes, that is scenario 1.
Okay. And so when you get to the 14.3, that's when you have the addition of the contingencies, right?
That's the addition of some of the sales tax and the contingencies that are on the lower half, but then also the upper half up there is some of the what you call kind of soft costs that are on top of the actual construction. So for instance,
I see.
Grand
I see.
Baba,
Yeah.
their
Okay.
contract.
Yep, I see. Okay, very good. Questions. So we'll start with an engineer, Mr. Pearson, and then we'll go to Mr. Branstetter, an educator.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So when this first came about, the estimated cost, that we were thinking, I guess, was around 7 million, which would, is a stark contrast from where we're at now. Are all three of these scenarios, these are all assuming like a full restoration of this? Is there any differences in the levels of restoration between these three, or is it just the added cost for the electrical and then the added cost for the exterior improvements and stuff? Can you talk about are there, different remediation levels or restoration levels?
Sure, I'm going to take a stab at it, and then I'm going to ask Devi if he has some additional comments on that. So, scenario 1 is yes, the full ground up restoration, and maybe I shouldn't say ground up, but the restoration of the H barn, taking it from the old agricultural use to occupancy for the events and the types of events that we're looking to house there. The scenario 2 still gets you the structural components of the building, but it might, it would be either reducing in scope or eliminating some things that we could add later, such as the closed circuit television, the Wi-Fi, some of the communication stuff, things that we can go back and retrofit at a later date, but may not be necessary in the structural. We want the building to be sound. So that's where we're looking at some of those things. Also, in scenario 2, that goes from a phase 3 or 3-phase electric, bringing that, which is you'll see it's about a 576,000 estimated line item, and the reason for that is 3-phase electricity is all the way down Angle Lane, down on Elwood. So we'd have to bring that all the way up to the park. By eliminating just that line item, you're also then looking at your MEP, your mechanical, electrical, and plumbing components of the building that in the initial cost estimate are based on 3-phase electricity. By changing that to single-phase electricity, you will change your MEP. And so those line items would have to be looked at as well in scenario 2 for further cost estimating. And then scenario 3 does not get you the full structural upgrades to the building. It will get you the north wing, the rebuild of the center. And if I go back to this slide here, in the center section, you'll notice there's kind of a faded red dashed line. That is the current footprint of the center section. That gets removed and a whole brand new center section gets built and moved out to the front to create some of this indoor capacity. So in scenario 3, you would get the north wing. So you'd have a smaller event space, some classroom space, the restrooms, the lobby, and the rooms for all your MEP and your fire and all that kind of stuff. You would not get the lower wing here on the south side, but we would have to do some structural engineering to shore up that south wall, if we're going to leave it in place, or if the idea is to tear it down, we would have to do some sort of, structural wall there. I do have a fourth suggestion. I didn't include it, but would be to keep the roof structure and do the structural work on that south wing to keep it as an open space, covered area that could, in the future, be enclosed. But that's not what we're looking at here. That was another idea. Does that answer your questions?
Yeah, that answers that one. I have another question. What kind of cost savings, roughly could we be looking, if any at all, I guess? I don't know how these work, but I assume that restoring something is more expensive than just building something new. What kind of a just ballpark would we be in if we just demoed this and kept the silos and made it look the same, but it was actually all new and just kind of, retained the footprint and stuff. But I mean, is that a significant cost savings potentially, or is it not really any difference,
It's a great question. And I say it's a great question because I brought that same question up when we were doing the charrette design work. And because it's a reality that new construction can be less expensive. What we're doing here, besides just building a new building, is we're restoring a historical site. And so the cost for, and I'm going to let Susan answer this a little bit too, the cost for demoing this and building a brand new building versus renovating the existing building, the cost benefit wasn't there when you factor in what we're trying to accomplish by restoring this historic building. And I'll let you, because I know the numbers weren't that far off.
Yeah, that's right. We did ask RLB to comment on that, and they, when looking at the cost per square foot, they said, this isn't that far off from what you would pay to build new, just thinking about kind of a low to medium level construction, but you're just getting, and it might be a little less, but not significantly enough to make up for the fact that you're losing the character, the story, and all the other things that go with the sort of the meaning of this building in the community. So we didn't have them estimate, give a number, but it was enough to kind of put that question to bed, because it felt like, yeah, it's not going to be worth the small delta that you might get to actually, and then, you'd have to redesign, and there's costs associated with that too. So
Okay,
that
thank you.
helps.
Scott, did David have anything to add generally on the capital side or project side, or not yet?
Did we hit the points?
I'll turn to Mr. Branster. He may have a question that prompts a response. Anyone else, Jane?
Speaking to the historic preservation aspect, and should we pursue funding as a kind of from the state for a legislative request, I think there's some coordination and collaboration that we would have with Department of Architectural and Historic Preservation to be eligible for grants. I think there's just, because Fort Silicon Park is a historic district, I think there's just, in addition to just telling the story of that and being eligible for grants, I think it's really important that dance that we do with the Department of Archaeological and Historical Preservation would be one where we can understand how far along the levels of historic preservation that could be done, and just kind of understand from them that that rating of that we can do based on kind of that conversation with them. And we did get that process started. We just kind of shared with them this 30% said, and they really like the direction that it's going, but ultimately there will be a review from them that can just help us guide what that process would look like within the historic district. It's just a really sensitive area that is designated for Fort Silicon Park. So just something to keep in mind, and we will kind of figure that out as we continue, should council agree.
Thank you. Mr. Branstetter? And then Mr.
Thank you,
Florcell.
Mr. Mayor. Could you put up the capital budget on the screen again? So the big black square in under scenario 1. Does that mean that the roughly almost $1 million relating to the $600,000 relating to the 3-phase power in capacity is included in the number above?
Yeah, so scenario 1 is the full build, including what you see there under where it says base bid and then alternate 1 and 2. Scenario 1 includes all of that. The black box was my attempt to just kind of draw your eyes past. They're just blank boxes underneath there. So there's trying to get your eye to draw down to the next section. If that was confusing, I apologize.
Well, I apologize for just my way of looking at things is that the first thing that drew my attention was the black box. It's fine.
Yeah, now that it's
Or
on
the black
screen,
hole.
I agree.
So so essentially the 576,000 and the 350,000, those two lines are included in the 11,073,000 number. I mean, we in a scenario 1, we get the phase 3 power and the additional site work.
Yes, that is correct. So you could choose to not do alternates 1 and 2, and that number would be lower.
Okay. In the additional site work, the alternate 2, is that 350,000 reflective of all the additional site work that's on the scenario 1 schematic? Or is that a reduced level of additional site work?
So looking at scenario 1, which I just pulled up, you'll see on the north side there, you have an ADA parking. You have kind of a light shaded green area that goes behind the building. That is kind of a paved grass area. So the kind of grass pavers. So it could be drivable, and that would be so people holding events there could drive around the back to offload, whatever they're having their event. It includes then the grassy areas around the whole building and the sidewalks. Scenario 2, when you look at that, the shaded areas surrounded by the pink, it does exclude all of the exterior landscaping, the parking area, and really focuses around the footprint of the building. So whatever, foundation work that needs to be restored, any of that type of stuff is what would be landscaped. And then the main entry pathway and the terrace area behind would be included, but the remainder of it would be excluded.
Okay, do I understand that in scenario 2, the $350,000 for additional site work is reflective of what would be done on the image you have on the screen now? It isn't and that all of the other that is inside those dotted lines, but not
So this
would something that would still have to be done in the future to bring it up to scenario 1 level?
So on scenario two, if you were to choose to include the alternate two, it would include the landscape areas. If we look at just the base bid of alternate two, it would eliminate this landscape area.
So the alternate two would add all of the very pale green things that are on this. It wouldn't add the ADA parking, but it would add the.
It would.
The other things there that is doing that. Okay, can we go back to the budget slide now? Now, and I'll move my eyes around the black box. So, up in the top under scenario 3, it looks very much like what the scenario 2, and in fact, some of the numbers are very much like scenario 1, even though the entire south structure isn't going to be dealt with. I mean, if we're not going to be doing things with the architecturally and engineering and having this inspections and furnishing the south annex, why is the number the same as when you have the south annex? It was like
So some of those numbers, the permitting fee is reduced based on the smaller square footage. And then looking at, we still would need to do cultural resources. It's for the site. So we would have to do the cultural resources. And then the survey and special inspections allowance is a number that we put in there. We may or may not expend all of that, but it's an allowance that we budget for anything that would be a special inspection. So the site furnishings, you're correct. We probably could lower that number some because we will not be purchasing tables and chairs to go in the south wing.
So in your information that you gave us and you talked about scenario 3, you indicated that if you're only doing upgrading work on the lobby and the north barn, that in the permitting process, it may evolve that you have to demolish the south barn. Which reduces the amount of event space by 2/3 from the other two scenarios. And significantly reduces the impact that public and that the original vision was seeking in terms of going from almost 7,000 square feet of event space down to 2,200 or 2,300 to be able to go and do that. And additionally, if it should be determined that you have to demolish the south barn, it seems that you lose some of the historical perspective that you're trying to retain and be able to remind current and future generations of. So I guess the idea, and you mentioned a fourth scenario where we keep the south roof as a cover, but the space under it wouldn't be a building. I think that the way that you worded it, it said this might happen if we use scenario 3. And I guess I'm not quite sure for myself that that's a risk I would want to take of not being, of losing half of the H barn to be able to.
Mr. Branson, it's hard to hear you. Gotta get a little closer to the microphone.
That fits with scenario 3. So I guess how likely a requirement would be demolishing the south barn be under scenario 3? You worded it as though it's not certain, but maybe, but
And that's just that we wouldn't know until we did a little further investigation on being able to keep the structure as in its old condition that's, unoccupied or doesn't have an occupancy rating that's attached to the new structure that'll, have occupancy, it'll have sprinklers, all of that kind of stuff. If we leave the old attached, more investigation would have to be done with Graham Baba, with Public Works and engineering to know further down the road if that would have to be something that we couldn't keep. So that's why I worded it the way I did, because at this point right now, we don't know what that looks like. What we're hoping and moving forward is that we have a clear direction of which scenario we're looking at, and then we will be able to give you that answer further down the road,
Okay.
if that's a scenario.
All right. And then in your discussion of scenario 2, and you talked about taking out some things that could be retrofitted later in your remarks, you mentioned Wi-Fi as one thing. And yet it seems to me that if we really have a focus on trying to attract significant events to come to use it in this day and age, almost any event, particularly that would be corporate or a conference or something to that, the Wi-Fi is going to really be a basic. It's not an optional retrofit item. It's kind of a basic item that an event type center needs to have. So I guess that Wi-Fi is included in the scenario 1 costing.
Yeah, and perhaps I misspoke on Wi-Fi in general. It's some of the the AV, like some of the hard wiring that's in the building that can be retrofitted later to support some of the house speakers or microphones or whatnot that could be done later on, where structurally and a rentable space, somebody could still hold an event there where they would rent and bring in their own sound equipment and not have the ability to use what we have in-house. I'm going to use an example. When we did the International Cyclocross event at the park a couple of years ago, it was televised on ESPN Plus, which was their internet carrier. And one of the desires, I won't say requirement, but it was a really strong desire, was that the venue had a Wi-Fi connection that had the bandwidth, for lack of a better term, to be able to broadcast and show the event live. And it was a scramble and a struggle, but we were able to provide that. And how we did that was literally ran fiber optic cable across the sports fields back to our connection to where they needed it, and which wasn't an ideal situation, but we were able to provide it. By having that type of equipment built into the building from the get-go will help in the different events and types of things we can do in the building. But it isn't structurally necessary to getting the building built, if that makes sense.
I understand the comment. It isn't structurally necessary to getting the building built. I tend to think it's necessary to get the building used. Okay, to build a building that's not going to be, attract the uses that we want to achieve the different benefits that your presentation highlighted, doesn't seem wise. And let me ask about one other element of retrofitting because I'm going back to our experience with the pavilion. And we adopted a similar to scenario 2 strategy with the pavilion of where we said, well, there are some things that we just won't do. We'll just get the thing built, but then it won't have everything inside that was needed. And that included the kitchen and some other things. And ultimately, it was that scenario proved to be something that we had to continue to invest in to bring it up to a level of usability that would attract what we wanted and to even do what we wanted to do inside the building to do this.
Yeah, ultimately costs, if you come back and retrofit anything, your cost is going to be more expensive than if you just include it in the original build. If we, for instance, held on to the south wing and didn't do it and tried to come back at a later date, you're looking at remobilizing, a new contractor, you're looking at, design work, you're looking at all the different expenses. So the example you used of the pavilion was a great example of how we did it and how we could have done it.
So to go back to Mr. Pearson's inquiry about what about retaining the silos and demolishing the building and building a new building that is essentially a historically accurate facsimile, while the silos remain the historical element that is anchors the site to efficiency. And I guess I would really be interested in, and I heard the idea that way, they thought it might not be that different. But I think that there are some ways that it would be different in that the longer term maintenance of a structure that was built that way that just retained the silos as the historical original, but that created something that very closely replicates the appearance of what is there would be, when you look long term at maintainable, a new building, you end up with maintenance costs and so that, but they don't start on day one. Whereas retrofitting this building, I think, is still going to start to have considerable maintenance that goes on, even if we do all of the architectural retrofit, but we're maintaining a lot of the very old structural elements to be able to go and do that. So I'd be interested in seeing an actual set of numbers regarding that option, because I think that the silos themselves can provide on the footprint of the property, provide the carrying on historical element, while the other would be, another thing could look very much like what is there now, would blend in with what is all there now in terms of the other barns and things to be able to go and do that. So and very close, and I don't know if very close means within $1 million, but about $1 million is, I guess I'd really like someone to really look at that, to be able to go and do that and see what other benefits with some modern building construction techniques would bring to the longevity of the facility to be able to go and do that. And I guess that I would say that I'm at this time, I'm really thinking that if we're going to do scenario one, or we could pair scenario one to what a finished product is, and then to do it once and get a finished product as opposed to a phased set of things to get to where we want to do. I mean, let's build something that meets as much of the vision and intent, and it will have the impacts that which would be there. I think that's what we would do, and so maybe it's a scenario one minus, okay, but or maybe it's even a scenario one plus. I don't know, to be able to go and do that. But I'm not really in favor of sequencing it, because the three scenarios are not they're not really scenarios. They're not each finished projects. Scenarios 2 and 3 are just interim projects to try to eventually get to something like scenario 1.
I turn to Mr. Lauricella. Are you ready? Give everyone a shot here. Mr. Lauricella?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Scott. And again, thank you to all the folks who came in to speak on behalf of this project and how critical it is. At the risk of monologuing for a little bit, I promise I'll get to a question at the end. But
always a good thing.
Yeah, so in 2022, this council, or 5 out of 7 members of this council, started this journey with Partners for Parks. And in 2023, when I joined the council, it was clear that one of our big priorities was a multi-generational community center to serve, newborns to, octogenarians and beyond, right? Those things could be in conflict of each other, or they could go together. When I look at Fort Steilacoom Park, it's already a gathering place. It's a recreational regional hub in our area. Within a 30-minute walk, you've got a community college, 2 high schools, a middle school, and 3 elementary schools. And I think we could look at this in terms of developing a Fort Steilacoom Park strategic master plan that includes the H-Barn, the pavilion, and maybe a community center. As we toured community centers earlier this year, there were a number of them that were one single building, but there were some, like in Auburn, that were a combination of things that were sort of phased together with what seems like a strategic plan that went into it. When we look at the things that happen in the park now, we've got Summerfest, we've got the farmer's market. The H-Barn could conceivably be a space for an off-season farmer's market where you can have folks indoors, because our markets are typically limited by weather. There's opportunity there. So I guess my question is, have we looked at a master plan phased approach where an H-Barn and potentially more space could be built on for a multi-generational community center as one sort of large integrated space?
When you're saying master plan, this space or the site, are you talking about the building itself, or master planning the general area and how it incorporates?
Yeah, so I'm talking about the park as a whole, and the ability to have sort of this big gathering space that includes the H-Barn, but think bigger, right? Think of what we looked at in things like the Star Center in Tacoma, where things are built in proximity to schools, so folks can come from there to recreate, as you will, and have that sort of space. Have we looked at that sort of approach?
So traditionally in the past, our legacy plan has been that guide for kind of the capital improvements. Doesn't mean that we couldn't pull out Fort Steilacoom because of its regional nature and do that as a separate master planning process. And we are underway on the legacy plan. And we could take a look at that and see if that's feasible. Right now, we're on track to have the legacy plan completed for in May, so that we're in line and ready for the next round of grants. And you have to have that master plan process complete so that you're eligible.
Okay,
So
that makes
we can
sense.
look at
And
that.
maybe this could be an addendum to that plan or something beyond that. But I don't know what the rest of council thinks, but I think this is a rare opportunity to get what our former parks director would call a 2-for-1, right? And maybe that's something we could look towards. It may delay an H-barn project from, getting out of the gates, but if it gives us a better perspective on a longer term benefit for the community, I think it's worth it. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other thoughts or comments? Oh, go ahead, Mr. Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the things I think that would really help kind of tie these options and maybe even the alternative that Mr. Brandsetter was requesting is some sort of a business plan that, if we do option 3 and we only get to use a third of the building and it doesn't have a kitchen, I mean, what does that really do for us as far as getting events and things like that? Like, is it a marketable space to really rent out, or is it just a phase 1 that's going to sit there until we do phase 2 and phase 3 and so on? Or, the same thing with the scenario 2, what does that really get for us as a marketable space to rent out and to use? Similar with the option, whatever, for something, some other option, I guess it could lose the historical factor, but it would gain, some other, things, I guess, of being a new building that doesn't have random beams everywhere that are, the space would be more open. So there's, you can probably use it in some different ways, maybe. I don't know. I'm just saying, it'd be helpful when we're looking at these to really understand what kind of value we're going to be getting back on these different scenarios. So that would be, I think, really helpful. The other thing, and I would just add on to Mr. Loracell's comments about the council goals, and when I look at the council goals, we have our 4 goals, and the first goal, which I think that we were taking great strides in, is a downtown park and community center. And the community center was part of the goal number 1, which was to be located in the downtown. I mean, that was the vision, at least at the time, and the goal. I think it'd be worth evaluating where there would be a good spot, maybe out at Fort Silicon, or if that spot should be better in the downtown core. I mean, that's a debatable topic, but I have some concerns with the cost escalations. I think everyone probably does. The way this thing worked out, a handful of years ago with the $7 million number, that was only like a $200,000 or $300,000 ask out of the general fund. We're already going to be subsidizing with LTAC and these other things. And now it's, to really do like option 1, which is the full option. I mean, now we're talking about a major undertaking here. So I have some concerns with that as it relates to our other priorities. I just don't, that's the hard part. This is a great project, no doubt, but I have a hard time, we already have our clear vision and with our goals listed out that we agreed on as a council, and that's our priorities. So I just have a hard time where this one stacks up with requiring so much financial support up front. So
Good points. To address the issue of utility, because it is a study session, I did invite our LTAC members who provided comment, but if they have comments during the study session about utility from tourism related thing, I'd invite you to, if you have any response to that on scenario 1 versus 2 or 3. We'd have to have you up to the microphone, Dean. Probably just people of our LTAC, yeah. Because it's not general public comment period.
Thank you. I guess I'll just start by saying anything's better than nothing, and certainly would advocate for the highest outcome we can. I mean, the more the better on this. This is a unique opportunity across the board. We don't have a complete pro forma, obviously, to look at this. I would recommend that discussion in the mix as well at some point, so that, to some of the questions and my own as well, just to look at what that actually means in terms of the depth of the different scenarios, maybe in stages or whatever they may be. But ultimately, I definitely think that headed this direction is a significant change and boost for the host capacity of the park and what can be done there. So,
okay, thanks. Susan, can I ask you a question about addressing Mr. Branstetter's thought on utility and viability? And let me see if I can get the question right. So assume for a moment that you wanted to sustain the silos for historic preservation, but you had an open canvas and you could use structural steel instead of having to fiddle around with the old wooden beams, and you could reconfigure space that might be more usable as opposed to constrained by the historic preservation that you were faced with. Could that provide, in your opinion as architect, better utility and possibly a lesser construction cost, steel as opposed to?
Yeah, I don't know about steel. I feel like lately the cost of steel has been pretty high.
Okay.
But I'm not an expert in that. I need to check with our estimator, and I can ask around our office too what they're seeing, but that's what I've been hearing lately. I mean, we'd be super excited to design a new building. We do a lot of adaptive reuse. We also do new buildings, and yeah, absolutely, you could get great utility from a new building. This building is interesting though in its configuration as an H, right? Because it does have these two wings that really lends itself to having different activities happening simultaneously. And then with the potential of that courtyard in between, there's a lot of potential, and you could redesign it in that same configuration. I think you'd want to, I'm guessing what likely would happen, this building is a contributing building to the historic district. If it were torn down, even if it were rebuilt to kind of come as close as possible to the historic, I'm not sure how DAHP would view that, taking down an existing historic structure. There's probably an argument that could be made like, well, it's really unsound and, we have to tear it down in order to save it. But I would advocate though, if it were taken down, that it be thought of anew as something that's not just replicating what's there, but really looking at, what would actually be the best thing, for the community and for the use. I don't know if that answered the question, but
I think it's helpful. Anybody else have any questions for Susan on that point? Mr. Boki, did you? Ryan does?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a brief. So DAHP, so we'd potentially lose out on like $35,000 worth of contributions. Is that what that would equate to?
I can't speak to
that's what it says here. So and then the state legislative request, I assume that wouldn't go over as well if it was so we're talking about $280,000 or something, worth
different request than a historic capital.
Different requests. So, or potentially losing out on some, but I guess it just kind of depends on what, again, like that business model is of, if you had something new that was a really great marketable space that you can get a lot of people in, maybe it makes more sense versus, I think that would be interesting to know, what the estimated return on investment could be. So thanks.
And on the cost issue, I'm going to ask a question. I don't know if Ms. Kraus is prepared to even pontificate what you might be able to do with schematic bonds and then payment of the obligations with lodging tax, because our obligation on the McGavick Center payment, which is $101,000 a year for the last 20 years. That ends in 2026. And this is our last payment this year. So, and then when we started as council members about 15, 16 years ago, I think our lodging tax is about 400 grand a year, and now it's about $1.3 million. Much of that is capital. So can you give us any sort of perspective on how this possibly could be accommodated with
Sure.
councilman bonds?
So the request to the lodging tax was either for a $2 million direct allocation.
Right.
Or $2 million in debt service payments, or to support $2 million in bond proceeds. And that would be, once the McGavick Center was over, that would basically take the place of the McGavick Center debt. The McGavick Center debt is about $108,000, and we're estimating that it would be about $160,000 for the debt service payments on the $2 million over, I believe it was a 20-year life, I think is what I put in there.
How much do we have set aside for capital sitting there that it wouldn't have to be utilized on an annual debt service basis? We got a chunk in lodging tax.
Yeah.
For a project. How much is in there right now? It's about 4 million, isn't it?
Yeah, it was about 4 million.
Right.
Yes.
So you wouldn't necessarily have to pay, you could take that 2 million out of that 4, and
Yes.
that could be the allocation. Then future monies, if you were looking at some way to fund this, could be made with the additional lodging tax funds over the course of time.
Yes. So yes, there is a large pot of money that could be just directly allocated. And then for future ones, the city council really has the option of using all of the revenues from the lodging tax for capital.
Right.
So.
Any questions on Ms. Kraus on that? Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Branstetter, you had another question or point?
I just wanted to comment on Mr. Pearson and Mr. Lauracella's comment about how a community center plays in or relates to doing this. I personally see this is primarily this project is primarily historic preservation of some sort in a venue initiative. Community center is something that is also very much needed and wanted in the community, but it is a place that whose primary function would be the community center type activities. To do that with a great deal of input and investment and the furnishing of such a building would be focused to do that. And I think council has discussed that there is a great deal of benefit to tying that to the central business district, and for reasons of transportation, for availability of being able to go and do that. And I'd like to keep the two projects. Certainly this project can, upon occasion, host events that foster multi-generational, but not on an ongoing basis, because the basic furnishing of a community center is be significantly different than the furnishing of an events venue to be able to go and do that. And so I'd like to keep them separate. And then I would then, in terms of thinking about the idea of building the thought about considering whether retaining the silos and then having a completely new building that looks like a barn is much more in line with Councilmember Bell's addition to having a structure that could be LEED certified and have that incorporated into the standards for constructing it.
Mr. Boki, did you have some?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate that. I wasn't going to start off, but I will start off supporting Councilmember Branstetter's remarks on the difference between the community center and for those of us who went on those that day when we went to the different community centers in different cities, it's pretty clear there's different uses here. We're talking really about two different types of facilities. I think it would be very difficult to have a venue and a community center in the same spot. Not impossible. It's not that they don't rent and you know, the Star Center in South Tacoma, but it's really big and really took on, it's very large. And really took on a lot. Not something we're planning in either one of these cases. This facility wouldn't be large like that. And then the other facilities we looked at were much more, you know, there's a place for use. So they get that room, right? They keep that room. Their stuff's in that room and they use it. And I think the seniors are much along those lines. So I agree with Councilmember Brandstetter. My remarks are, what I'm hearing is we're still looking for a path forward. We're not saying no to this project. Clearly, the costs are eye-popping. But we do see the utility of it and the importance of it going forward as a city. The question is what it's going to look like. And I tend to agree with the members who are saying today, you keep the elements, and then we really do need to look at maybe some kind of more functional and lower cost and perhaps more modern option. I don't have an answer. It's not my bailiwick, right? But I do appreciate the remarks of everybody on the council tonight about this. I think we can find a way forward. And then we can have another discussion about the community center, which I think is going to be a very difficult discussion.
I'll just give my 2 cents a little bit on the topic. You know, I think we are trying to find a path forward, and I'm not sure we have consensus on what that path may be yet. I do hear us saying perhaps we can look at some different utility if we were not unfettered from the absolute historic preservation of the H in the barn. You know, keeping the silos, maybe keeping the concept of space in a more modern construction material type facility that would accomplish the needs we heard from our travel and community partners, as well as our partners here in the city. You know, from my thought on the utility of it, it really doesn't work as just an event center for the price unless we have more utility of that space on a daily basis. And I've often thought we don't have the senior center where we used to have it across from the Y in the old Pierce County building there. And they've been kind of roaming City Hall and doing as best they can to find a space to land. This could be utilized effectively as a senior center based on how they utilize space currently and would actually perhaps be better for their needs. And if down the road, through the other process we're looking at for our goal of the downtown multi-generational center, we eventually get that going on land that we completely own and funds that we've identified, it can gravitate and the space can change. But in the next 5 to 7 years, this may be our last best chance to do something on land we completely own, and a design and a community group that's raised $2.8 million toward this kind of facility. It may be a very, very solid option. So I think it's, in my opinion, worthy of continuing the conversation. It doesn't sound like we're quite where we want to be yet, and it might take a little bit of discussion on some funding mechanisms to get us there, you know, potentially too, you know, because it's a big hurdle. So, Mr. Williams, I don't know if that gives you any help or ambiguous guidance, and I can't recognize anybody outside of, thank you, ma'am, but we can talk to you afterwards, but we can't take additional public comment. We opened it up already for that. Any other thoughts, Mr. Williams, on what you've heard tonight, or what we can do to provide more guidance to move the ball forward on the conversation? Anyone else? Mr. Russell, thoughts?
Yeah, I think the goal here was to get an idea of what those next steps are. And trying to hone in on it so we don't have necessarily repetitive meetings in terms of some of these challenges. For example, a lot of the things that we heard about, creating a business plan to identify that. Those are the same questions I have as we talk about, what's that next step with the downtown park? And not to confuse the two, but one of the challenges that we have with that is, okay, what is that next step? Is it community engagement? If it is, I understand $100,000 has been allocated for that, but for a full community engagement process, it's going to give you those different options, those business plans. It's going to be well more than $100,000 to get. So that's going to be one of those next questions. If you're looking at combining some of those different components, and it may not have to be exact into this area, we can take a look at that and see what those next steps are. Obviously, going back through the previous agreements, those have been for the renovation and the restoration of this facility. So naturally, we'd want to talk to Partners for Parks to see how involved they would even want to be if it changes dramatically from some of those initial agreements and MOUs about really what was a restoration of the facility. So I think that would be an important step to see if that is just to have additional facility that have a homage to the past with the silos and some of those things. And so we can start working on that. I guess, one of the questions I would have as we do go forward is it sounds like, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm trying to gather this in coming in seventh inning of this discussion, is the scenario one, which truly is that when everyone wants to achieve for, a full build out of an event center space. I don't disagree with any of the comments I heard today about, well, if you take out the audiovisual component of it, that's a pretty significant hit to, the event center component. I'm kind of hearing that desirability of a 14 million is hard to move forward on, which is understandable going on the history. So I guess what I'm gathering is you'd like to look at an option for a new facility, potentially in that location, may temporarily serve some of those additional uses. But again, I think we'd have to have Partners for Parks on that of what would that look like and what is their partnership with that, if they're still interested in that, if it's not a restoration. So I think those are some of the questions that we would probably go and start working with the existing partnership and bring that back maybe in a quick update of, hey, we're out, we're in under these circumstances. And then we come back with, additional things of what that would look like. Do we want to shift some of those functions that we envisioned in the downtown park area to this location? Because there's a lot of space down there, right in that immediate area. There's additional buildings. Granted, they all have some of the same challenges in terms of restoration, and you may be looking at some new building in that component, and it may be temporary, but that would then provide potential flexibility for the downtown to go through a full engagement process and look at a longer term component. That really what you see in those downtown business components are things that then build private investment around it and continue to feed off of it. So two different projects kind of intertwined, but from what I heard tonight, and again, I fully accept that I heard wrong, is what are potential other options to maximize the utility of anything we do for the investment we get down in this location? And so I guess I'd say, am I kind of on track with that?
I think so, other than buying a few lottery tickets.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So then I think the next steps that we would have at the staff level is immediately work with the Partners for Parks component to see what that could look like, to see if there is a way to shift some of the guidance and direction to still maintain some of that initial vision, but yet look at other ways to maximize that dollar investment in the overall capacity and achieve some of those goals that council has identified. And some of them may be shifted a little bit. One of the things that we just focused on a lot over the history of the projects I've had is, okay, you keep those goals there, but sometimes the pathway to them changes and shifts. But you keep that goal centered, and that goal that I've heard a lot of that really excited me as I was going through the process is some of these quality of life issues and the community center, multi-generational facilities. Sometimes the path to them does shift. And so I guess my takeaway from this is, okay, are there feasible options to try and still meet those fundamental goals, which, includes the partnerships that we have and trying to achieve some of the dynamics of the Partners for Parks. And maybe there's a break where there's some ends that just don't change. But I think we can have those discussions after hearing a lot of the feedback tonight to see, okay, what is a good way to reach some of those mutual interests that the council has, that the community has, that our partners have, and see, okay, hearing those mutual interests, is there a common ground that we can build off of that just maximizes everyone's participation in it? So I guess and I know that's vague in and of itself, but is that the kind of the guidance from the council perspective?
I think that's accurate. Yeah. Yep. I think that is a good synopsis.
Okay, so we'll just, our first meetings that we'll set up will be with Partners for Parks to just have this discussion. I think it's good to get these interests and the concerns, in terms of the value, but definitely still heard an interest. I mean, even just the national discussion of, okay, maintaining the silos. Well, that shows that there's that common ground. And again, how it ends up shaping itself out may shift and alter, but I think there's definitely common community interest by all the parties that we've heard from tonight, and just, okay, taking that as the basis foundation, how can we move forward into that next step? And that's what we will try to work on and bring something back, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Sounds great. Well, thank you all for your work on this. Thank you for coming, and thank you too for coming. We appreciate the feedback from LTAC and your respective positions in the community. So thank you for that. Great. Why don't we recess for about 5 minutes and give ourselves a bit of a break before we get into the review of the second quarter financial report with Ms. Kraus. So we'll be at recess. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back after a brief recess. We are now moving to the second item on our study session portion of tonight's agenda, that being the review of the second quarter financial report with our Deputy City Manager, Ms. Kraus. Good evening.
Good evening. So this is our second quarter report. It is a lengthy report and it's very detailed in the packet. So I did not plan to go through all of the tables. I know you're probably really pumped up after the last discussion to hear more numbers, but I'm just not going to do it this time. So I'm going to turn you to page 296, and the primary focus is on the general and street fund.
Okay.
Page 296.
Got it.
So on the general and street fund, and I'm just going to take a look at the last two columns, which is your 2025 year-to-date actual versus the 2024 year-to-date actual, as well as the 2025 year-to-date actual compared to the year-to-date budget. So on the revenue side, the operating revenues compared to year-to-date 2024, we are up $2.7 million or 10.4%. Compared to the year-to-date budget, we're up by $2.2 million or 8%. On the expenditure side, of course, our expenditures are going to be increased over 2024, but also on the year-to-date budget, we're also seeing increases. So I'm going to go back to the operating revenues. So compared to the year-to-date budget, we're up by $2.2 million, and that's primarily due to development services revenue increases. And specifically, that is the Western State Hospital permit. And within that, we do have other revenues that are seeing increases, but we also have revenues that are seeing decreases. On the positive side, we have our sales and use tax, which is up by $255,000 or 3%. A couple areas that are down is in our admissions tax, which is down by $45,000. Utility tax is down by $60,000, and gambling tax is down by $236,000. But with those areas, I do have some positive news, and whether they continue to be positive in the future is yet to be determined as I look at the financial forecast. So on the utility tax side, though we're seeing a decrease of $60,000 compared to the year-to-date budget, we did have a audit that was that started a number of years ago, and that concluded in July. So we got revenues for that. So that brought in about $105,000, not including some penalty and interest. So we're good on that front for now. Through July, our utility tax then would be up by $40,000, but remember that $104,000 is some one-time funds. On the gambling tax side, we just had several establishments that did not report anything for the month of June, or they did not make payment for the month of June. However, we followed up with them and they did remit for June, so they're caught up. So taking a look at gambling tax and where we are through July, the decrease is not as bad as what you're seeing on the financials of negative $236,000. It's down by $92,000. So we're seeing some decreases in activity.
I saw something in the news about Maverick Gaming either did a Chapter 11 filing or looking at closing.
Okay, so that one I did not see, but that is going to be one of the big ones. So we'll keep an eye on that one.
Did you guys see that as well?
But just overall, it's just some of the major players are seeing some decreases. And then I want to address also the admissions tax. The admissions tax is going to be looking a little bit better. So right now we're at a negative $45,000, but we did have one payer or one establishment that has not been remitting any of the tax for 2025. And so I looked into it, made a quick call, and because this establishment was not being responsive, but they came back with a call. And not directly to me, but I'm guessing that prompted the discussion. It was very similar to a situation that we had back in 2023. So we're anticipating for them to remit the taxes for all of 2025, and that should help our financial picture there. On the development services, So you'll see that we're increased by about $2.4 million, but some of those increases are offsetting the cost on the expenditure side. So I'll just jump down to the operating expenditures. They're up by $817,000. The one that I was highlighting about the revenues that have increased is for planning and public works. So compared to the year-to-date budget, planning and public works is up by $486,000, but higher increased revenues to offset some of those costs. On the administrative services side, we're seeing a decrease of $302,000. There is some timing differences on the internal service charges. So when mostly on the IT side, if there are expenditures, we'll see them later. The other part of it is the non-departmental, which is on the public defender side. We're seeing some savings there. However, keep in mind that we did increase the budget. We haven't paid out all of those to get caught up, and that won't occur until third quarter. So that number will be reduced as we look at third quarter. The other big one is on the police side. We're seeing an increase of $809,000 compared to budget. Our police department has had a number of retirees, and the bank balances for paid time off is pretty significant. So a portion of that is going to be related to payouts for retired or for employees that left the department. The other piece of it is the patrolling of Harry Todd Park and American Lake Park over the summer. That's contributing to it as well. So those are the two of the biggest increases related to police, and that's another piece that will be looked at as part of the mid-biennium and the financial forecast. The other piece of it I just want to bring to your attention is the ending fund balance. And so our ending fund balance is $13.2 million currently, but some of the revenues that we've collected have not yet been expended. So I don't want to sound negative in any way, but I think we still need to remain cautious, just seeing where our revenues fall and taking a pause on, discretionary spending. Same message, just continue. Yeah, so that really concludes my presentation.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Budget Analyst.
Why don't you, rather than me ask her, why don't we ask her to go through the aforementioned LTAC page, LTAC section of the
Sure,
budget?
might as well.
So we kind of get some idea, and then I'd like to ask, I'd like her to go through the REIT section too. The real
REIT
estate
section,
excise
absolutely.
tax.
Sorry, which section would you like?
The LTAC section and the real estate excise tax
Sure.
section. And I don't know what page they're on though.
Sure, I will take you there. Let me just get to it.
Excellent questions, Mr. Boki. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Coming from you, that
Okay.
haven't felt that puffed up in a long time. Sitting better. No more slouching for me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So I'll start with the lodging tax, and the lodging tax is going to be on page 96 of my packet, which is going to be page 389. So for lodging tax on a year-to-date through June, we've exceeded revenues by $31,000. So as the mayor mentioned, the estimate is about $1.3 million on the budget side. However, in 2024, we did take in $1,353,000. 2023 was also about $1.3 million. So lodging tax is doing good in that respect. But we also, something that I need to take a look at as I go through each of the different hotels and establishments is to take a look at what we still have and what has been converted. I think that we can expect to receive additional lodging tax revenues with some events that are occurring in 2026, though I wouldn't want to bank on it. On page 390, you can see that we have about $4.3 million. And in the lodging tax, and I didn't bring it with me, the lodging tax allocation, based on everything that was requested, we could not fund everything because of the availability of funds. But most everything was approved, some of it just at a lower threshold.
Below what we
Yeah. Yeah, so $4.3 million and just anticipated revenues for the future at 1.3 million. And then what was the other section that you wanted to review? Oh, real estate excise tax, sure.
Thank you.
So on the real estate excise tax, so you saw that in city manager's report, he provided an update on where we were. So through August, oh, sorry, I was just going to give you the summary. And real estate excise tax is on page, yeah. So it's on 84 in my packet, which is page 377. So real estate excise tax, as shown through June, we are seeing a negative $67,000, $68,000 compared to the year-to-date budget, and compared to the 2024 activity, we're down by $32,000. The estimate is $2.4 million, which is very similar, slightly higher than what we had actually received in 2023, as well as 2024. And just to give you an update of where we are through August, we did okay in August. Our revenues were up compared to budget by $30,000. So from a year-to-date August, revenues are just on target. So we hope to continue that path, but it's something to be evaluated as part of also the mid-biennium. We haven't had an issue where real estate excise tax has come in short, but still good to be cautious.
Help me jog my memory. Do we have any debt service against the real estate excise tax?
Yes, we do. And we do have, let me see, on the debt service side, this is on page 101 of my packet, or on your packet, it will be page 395. So you'll see that we have the 2021 limited term obligation bonds, as well as the 2020 and the 2019. Those are all supported by real estate excise tax. And this was for the transportation projects that the city council approved prior, around going into the 1920 budget. So those have already been, the debt's already been issued, and we have obligations there.
Thank you.
Were there other areas that you wanted me to?
Any other? Yeah, Mr. Lorcella.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Kraus. When you're talking about the utility tax revenues, if I recall correctly, we either increased the utility tax or franchise fees for either a gas purveyor or electric purveyor. Is that captured in here, or when did that go into effect?
Yes, as part of the 25 and 26 budget, the city council did increase the utility tax on electricity and natural gas to be 6%. So all of our utility tax is at the 6%. That went into effect technically in 2025.
Okay, in January?
Yep.
I'm sorry?
In January of 2020?
January, yes.
Okay, so that's captured with it.
That's captured in here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But I think, if you look at, I'll just point out on the utility tax, I'll show you the areas that are changing. It is a little bit, well, not for this month, but for the next report. So the areas that are down are compared to budget is solid waste. Actually, all of the areas are down solid. The only areas that are up is electricity and natural gas, and swim. The other areas, solid waste, cable, phone, those are all down. So it'll just be a matter of taking a look at all of the payers to try to determine where we'll be at year end.
Very good. Well, we've had a lot of construction activity. I think the assessor's office came out with a report throughout the county, and Lakewood looked pretty good on new construction. I think it was 100 and some odd million. That's always helpful. Any
those-
questions? Is that it, Ms. Kraus?
That is it. Those are the numbers.
Well, we appreciate the good work. As always, thank you for the numbers and the report.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Vargas to help us review the HB 2015 local sales and use tax to fund public defense. And this starts on page 439.
Yep. So good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. You've probably seen this item throughout the years. It seems to be the year of public defense. So I'll go ahead and do a brief review here of how we got here. Indigent defense standards have changed. We've had a lot of changes in recent years. Last year, the Bar Association released its updated indigent defense standards, which essentially reduced misdemeanor caseloads down to 120 cases per attorney, down from the current 400 caseload limit. And that was set to begin in July of 2025. And as it happened to be, the Washington State Supreme Court released its own interim order in June of 2025, which stated that this new 120 misdemeanor caseload limit would actually begin implementation on January of 2026. And this could actually be reached over a 10-year window, with full compliance in January of 2036. So implementation may be accomplished in a phased approach with an annual reduction of at least 10% of the difference between the current standard and the new standard. So doing some math here, the current standard is 400 cases per attorney. The new standard is 120 cases. That's a difference of 280 cases. So each year, the caseload limit must decrease by at least 28 cases per attorney. And so another way to look at it is that our Pacific Point Defense, which is our main public defender firm, they currently have about 4 attorneys for Lakewood. And so each year we're losing about 120 cases capacity over the years if we weren't to change nothing. So looking at the sales tax information here, in 2025, the state legislature passed House Bill 2015. It created 2 new programs for increasing public safety in the communities, 2 new tools rather, a new grant program and a new local sales and use tax. So the punchline here is that this local sales and use tax can be used to help fund public defense. The grant program is strictly for hiring new officers. So to go over the sales tax information, we have pretty broad use with this. The new 0.1% sales tax can be used for a variety of criminal justice purposes to include public defense. We have local legislative authority over this in that the tax can be imposed councilmanically through June 30th, 2028. So after that date, this tax would have to go to a vote in the community. This new tax is permanent, such that once the tax is passed by council, sales tax remains. It has no sunset. Requirements here is that the city can only collect this tax if it meets the requirements of the Criminal Justice Training Commission, or CJTC, grant that this House bill creates. But there is no requirement to actually apply for the grant. We just need to meet the requirements of it. This tax is stackable, and that it stacks with other sales tax, and that this revenue is also not shared with other jurisdictions. There's a caveat, however, is that the city voters must not have rejected or repealed any public safety sales tax within the last 12 months, and that is indeed the case here in Lakewood. And so I went ahead and pulled some language from the bill. We are able to staff adequate public defenders to provide appropriate defense for individuals. So we can use this tax to help fund public defense. Moving on to sales tax implementation, there's a few steps here. One of the first ones is to send eligibility documentation to the CJTC that we meet all of their new grant requirements, which we do, and I'll cover that in a bit here. We need to put the sales tax on the council agenda. with the schedule of sales tax ordinance for a vote at an upcoming city council meeting. The ordinance must include a finding that the city has met all the requirements of the grant. Once passed, the sales tax can take effect January 1st, 2026, only if the city meets an October 17th deadline to notify the Department of Revenue of its passed and signed ordinance. So currently we have the tax ordinance set for the October 6th regular meeting. So if the direction is to do so, we could have this tax implemented by the deadline to start January 1st, 2026. And we just need to send that signed tax ordinance to the Department of Revenue as outlined. So I included a handy graphic down there. DOR notification deadlines. We basically just have to send it in. We have to send in a signed tax ordinance 75 days before the date that the city chooses to implement it. So we can only implement it as well on January 1st, April 1st, or July 1st of 2026. So going over some qualifications here, and I went ahead and reviewed this with our police department. We indeed do meet all the qualifications to do so. So the city must provide the CJTC with a detailed staffing plan as outlined below. Includes items such as number of commissioned officers and also average response time. All that is readily available data, and we're able to send that off. Going further, looking at the qualifications checklist, there's also a number of other qualifications that the city indeed does meet with this new sales tax requirement. So we are copacetic there if we choose to do so. So looking at the analysis here, the city must add about one public defense attorney each year between 2026 and 2036 to comply with the caseload limit decreases each year and still provide adequate public defense for up to 1,740 case equivalents at our municipal court. And that's what we're currently contracting for with Pacific Point Defense. So looking at the table A at the end of the memo here, you'll see that if we were to implement the sales tax starting in 2026, that the sales tax revenue indeed completely covers the annual contract costs for our main public defender firm in 26 and 27. However, starting in 2028, projected sales tax revenue is less than the contract cost. And that delta grows to roughly about $2.1 million by the compliance year of 2035 or the end of 2035. So even with this new sales tax, we are looking at a delta between revenue and expenses here. So, yep.
Quick question for you. Right now, obviously, we're funding this out of just our general fund dollars. So
Correct.
this is just looking at the standalone increase to the sales tax potential.
Correct. This is just looking at if we were to implement the sales tax, what is the delta between revenue and cost throughout the years? Yep.
At least this would support the general fund over that time frame as well.
Correct.
That
So-
concludes.
So the recommendation here is that the city council indeed does implement this sales tax starting January 1st, 2026 to fund our primary public defense firm. Without the tax, we will have to be, covering the cost of public defense out of the general fund. And as we can see with the table, even with this new sales tax, we are looking at a hefty delta throughout the years. So that's the recommendation. And that concludes the presentation.
Thank you. Questions of Mr. Vargas? Certainly, we'll go Mr. Branstad, then Mr. Lorisella.
Mr. Vargas, is there
How much money it is?
in the legislation, is there a time, a year when the option to implement the sales tax goes away? I mean, you said we have to do it in 2026, but could we do it in 2028 or could we do it in 2029?
Certainly we can, but starting, I believe, it's after July of 2028. After June 30th, 2028, the sales tax is no longer councilmanic. You'll have to go to the vote of the people to implement it. So if you choose to implement it before June 30th, 2028, you can do so councilmanically. The option's still there after 2028, correct?
But the councilmanic option exists until 2028.
Correct, June 30th, 2028. Yep.
Okay. And your analysis of the cost and the number of cases that when we had the municipal court judge here a short time ago, he indicated that he was doing some revisions of where the city had stopped requiring those defendants who were supposed to make a partial contribution to their indigent defense, that he was going to implement that to begin to obtain that source of revenue that people were going to provide. Did your analysis make any estimates about what that would bring in?
No, but it sounds like a drop in the bucket of what we're facing in terms of a contract cost. Because even with that partial payment, I mean, we're still looking at the millions of dollars each year for our main contract with our main public defender. So.
Okay, and then were you provided any data as to or any options as to what the policy changes in terms of cases to actually prosecute would save against that total number of projected cases?
No. They're looking at diversion program analysis, I believe you're referring to. No, I've not looked at that.
Okay, but that diversion program analysis is ongoing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Lauricella?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I look through this, I think maybe I should have gone to law school instead of business school, or maybe trained to be a lobbyist. I'm not sure. A while back, we talked a little bit about potential other screening for qualifications for this defense. Do you know if that has gone anywhere in our courts, or what that looks like, or what sort of restrictions the state puts on us for doing that?
Sure. And honestly, even if we were to make tweaks in that process, by state law, if you qualify for any state program assistance at all, then you are, entitled to a public defender. So even if we were to make changes at the margin, the total change, I don't think would really, again, it'd be a drop in the bucket in terms of savings. Yeah.
Councilmember Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. So with the revenue that would be generated from this, are there stipulations of how it could be spent, where it could be spent? Is it, I would like to know about that a little bit more.
Sure. So it is broadly for criminal justice purposes, but there is a specific line in the bill that I included in the memo, which basically says to hire and to have adequate public defense staffing for adequate public defense services. So yes, we can indeed spend this money to hire public defenders, which essentially is what it will be used for, right? To increase our by one attorney each year. So
is it just for attorneys, or is it for additional public safety? Is it for, positions within the just criminal justice system for us?
there's quite a long laundry list what this could be spent for, honestly. I just took out the public defense piece, but yes, we could use it for other public safety purposes as well. Correct. Yep.
And maybe I missed it in the report, which was well done, by the way. Thank you for that. With the caseload standards going down, at what point does that trigger the need for additional prosecutors? When the caseload standards go from 400 and some odd ultimately over time to 120, at what point does that trigger the need for the additional prosecutor staff?
I didn't look
We
at
know what that
prosecutors.
trade-off is?
Yeah, I did not look at prosecution. I looked at
Because
solar.
I mean, that's going to be a cost too, right?
Correct.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, there are not prosecution requirements.
No, but do
So-
you see the workload increasing? I mean, if you have, the caseloads going down on the defense side, does it increase you guys, your workload?
I've said for many years to this council that I staff according to calendars. It can be 100 lawyers, it can be 2 lawyers. It's a calendar.
Yeah,
I
okay.
I have a bias on this. You're aware of that. I don't need more lawyers to cover one calendar.
Got
I
it.
just don't. And as much as the state wants to try and make 12 cases a month or 10 cases a month or
Right.
whatever they're reducing these people to work for the defense, it's simply,
A matter of calendars. Yeah.
and it's not, I don't think it's a healthy balance for a misdemeanor prosecutor. So I'm not at this time projecting a need for more prosecutors over this. Of course, I reserve the right, because I've told you
Yeah.
also over the years, all the times I've been wrong about something,
Right,
but I
right.
don't think I'm wrong about this. You know, I came from prosecution and I just,
That's
I
helpful to
don't
hear.
understand these caseloads. I'll just put it that way. And it certainly doesn't make sense to add prosecutors to this unless they start making more calendars.
Right.
If the court were to decide to open an extra calendar in a separate room, then I do need 2 bodies. But if it's one calendar, I need 1 body.
Got it. Got it. That's helpful. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Vargas? Do we have any concerns about proceeding as recommended with getting this on the docket here in October? Mr. Brandstetter.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, would much rather hear some consideration about how we're moving forward on the diversion theme rather than rushing to try to do something for 2026. We were advised before that the current biennium budget will be able to, when we did the new contract with the folks over there, that would be able to work within the existing biennial budget, which covers 2026. I think that some of those areas, particularly what diversion practices we might put in, and then what internal practices the court might resolve, will change Mr. Vargas's chart somewhat. And then, this is a tax that gets us a solution for 2 years. Okay, in other words, I think I'd like to take a little bit more time to look at a little bit more longer term solution to include whether there may be something else. So I would rather think about, if we want to consider this tax as a tool, of looking at a January of 2027 implementation, which would mean we'd have to do something a year from now as opposed to a month from now.
Okay, any other thoughts on that? Mr. Boki, I can tell you a little bit about Pierce Transit's potential thought on sales tax in a minute.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit too early to jump on this, and we do have options when it comes to municipal court. So, I mean, I think we see where this all lands and see what the actual costs are next year, and then really
We have the updated contract right now, though, right, for defense funding we
Correct.
approved.
Yeah, but we could take other steps. We don't have to have a municipal court.
Mhm.
Right, and maybe that's what the legislature's telling us, that the smaller municipal courts just are not going to be viable going forward. So, I think we wait and see how it plays out.
Mr. Lorcel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would be interested in other options to reduce costs internally as opposed to raising taxes externally. And if there's any other levers we can pull or dials we can turn. We're talking 1 FTE a year, maybe there's other places.
Okay,
Thank you.
Councilmember Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too agree with my fellow council members that I think this is something that we could hold out on. I would be just curious as to see what would the actual cost be per household. I don't know if it's been broken down anywhere, like what if something like this was implemented, just for reference.
Anyone else? Councilmember Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I also kind of am in favor of the idea of kicking the can down the road and seeing what sticks at other places. And, you know, it seems like we could probably weather it for a little bit. And then definitely would want to probably get something solidified before it would have to go out to the vote. So.
Very good. So it sounds like we have some consensus to hold off for rushing to the October ordinance consideration. But we do appreciate the work. Yeah, and the heads up.
Understood.
Okay. Yeah, I can tell you anecdotally, and Ms. Bell and certainly Mr. Boki can tell you that these public defense costs are just they're gonna increase. It's gonna be a challenge on all these cities and their general funds at some point, and it's going to be a hard decision for the community to determine how much public safety they can afford to pay. And that comes to charging decisions and all sorts of other stuff. So, you know, it's a challenging time. Okay, but that gives you the consensus you're seeking.
Yes, it does. Sounds like we're holding off from the October ordinance and then perhaps hearing that diversion program analysis first and then looking at other options first as well before coming back. So we have another year roughly on our main contract here. So we have time.
Perfect. Well, thank you again. You've done good work here tonight and we appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay, that concludes our items for discussion on the study session portion of tonight's agenda. And we now turn to Mr. Russell for his report.
Yeah, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council, just a couple items. As was mentioned earlier, we'll be coming forward with a ordinance to clean up the camera portion of our city code related to number of locations, and also anticipate coming forward with a further discussion on potential addition of camera locations and what the new state legislation means related to that and how it impacts future revenues and actually existing revenues within that program as well. So looking for a time to calendar that on the schedule. Couple of other items, you know, I sent out information related to our Friendship City visit from Danzau and the tree planting. Kind of like to get some council guidance on preference in terms of location and species of tree. The general plan for the parking lot was dogwoods, but could definitely fit in a different tree if that was desired. Or we could plant a tree in a different location, but thought, you know, this is a relationship really between, you know, this body and our Friendship City. So thought that it'd be a good idea to have council at least give some guidance on that. Like I said, they looked at a Chinese windmill palm as a potential tree, a little bit closer to the region of Danzau, but not exact, but kind of tries to meet that, or the dogwood in either of those locations. So, but just kind of see if council has any specific guidance as it relates to that.
Yeah,
Dogwoods?
I don't care about the tree, whatever works and is gonna survive, but I'll pop off a little bit. The new grassy areas in the front are really nicely lined up to have 4 potential plantings for each of our sister cities. So it looks like it actually would make some method to the madness in the front to do that.
I missed what location were you referencing?
Right in front here where they, you didn't realize what we had here before, but it was kind of junky plantings. They took it all out and put nice lawn areas in. And so they're kind of rectangular slots of lawn, and you could do a tree in each one of those rectangular spots, is a thought.
Yeah.
And then you do the plaque, and then you got the sister city for eventually each sister city right there in front. Like that?
Okay, so we're good with the dogwood in one of those locations.
Sounds good. Yeah,
All right.
great.
Last thing I had, other than, upcoming calendar, is met with our lobbyists at the state level and getting ready for the upcoming session. And she had a question related to meeting with our state representatives in there. And if we want to do it, the council as a whole, prior to that session starting and after we get the legislative agenda in place, which seems like a reasonable thing, but sometimes it's hard to get that. But wanted to get council input on that as well in terms of you want us to try and get something scheduled with the council as a whole for that.
I think that has been our practice to noodle over the legislative agenda, review the policy manual to make sure there weren't any updates. And then once we approved the legislative agenda for the year, then we scheduled a meeting with our legislators.
Yeah, and that seems like the right path. I think it mentioned occasionally they have gone and had to do with a shorter group based on scheduling, but perfectly fine. And actually, it's not a bad thing to have the whole group meet with and try and get that meeting set up. So,
And sometimes it isn't all the legislators that can make it, but we try to accommodate their schedule as best we can, and as many of us that can be there. We've had it in kind of a study session sort of format on the floor.
sure. Okay, we will proceed in that direction.
And I don't know, it's coming up here in October. We haven't had a chance to really talk about the legislative agenda that much. And I know we've talked a little bit tonight about some funding potential asks. I know there's $250 in for the H-Barn potentially. We may want to revisit that, or, we want to be solid with the ask.
Yeah, and that platform will come forward here. I don't have the calendar on when that is anticipated, but that was all part of the discussion movement. So we'll get that before council as well. And then just the calendar, and I'll just go over the upcoming weeks until our next meeting. This week we have the assumption of responsibility to CSM Ronald Hansen. Also tomorrow night, Fort Silicon Neighborhood Association meeting. The 18th, the ribbon cutting at American Lake. September 23rd, the Danza delegation will be here, as we just discussed. 24th, Mayor's Coffee. 27th, the Air Force Ball, the Hotel Murano, and October 2nd, the PSRC Regional Transportation Planning in Pierce County. And that's all I have, Your Honor.
Okay. Questions of Mr. Russell? Just to follow up on the 18th on the ribbon cutting, I'm not sure I can make it at 4:00. So Mary, or Deputy Mayor, you might want to make sure that you're there if need be, if they need someone to have a bigger set of scissors.
I do have that on my.
Okay. And the other thing, Mr. Russell, there had been some commentary in social media about the sources and uses of the funds that went into the American Lake Park improvements. So if that's available, a little handy info sheet.
Yeah, we plan on having placards up with the sources and uses.
Whatever works for you, just something small. If people had a question, we have something to hand out to them or something. Doesn't have to be
We'd
fancy,
anticipate
but-
having those on kind of some stand-up, so it's readily visible and something that can be easily translated to social media as well.
Absolutely. Okay, and then on the assumption of responsibility for the command sergeant major, Mr. Brandstatter, were you planning on going to that one? It's at the headquarters tomorrow.
I actually don't have it on my calendar.
It's not something I can attend because of my day job, so I just didn't know if we wanted to have someone present or not. Okay. Okay, and then we have PCRC, I think, on Thursday, Mr. Boki.
You know, I have it on the calendar.
Right.
It
I haven't
makes
seen
sense,
anything
but
yet.
I cannot find any information on the website if they've published an agenda or
I haven't
not.
seen anything either, so we'll take a look and see.
So I'm assuming, but I have not seen anything pop up.
Okay. All right, very good. Well, just with those clarifying questions, I'll open it up to council comments. How about starting with you, Mr. Boki?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, they hoping to make it to some of these events this week. Planning Commission is continuing their work on Wednesday night at 6:30. I do have a big ask though of the members. Last week we had our South Sound Housing Affordability Partners executive meeting. And they went over the legislative agenda. So I just want to run it by you. Mr. Branstadter's here. Next month's meeting, he's going to be there in my place. He's agreed, he's the alternate and he's agreed to do that. I won't be able to make it. So just if I may, Mr. Mayor, just kind of go through it to see if anything jumps out and if we've got some objection. Under priorities, Workforce Housing Accelerator Program, SHAPE, supports fully funding the Workforce Housing Accelerator Program, this revolving loan program administered by the Washington State Housing Finance Commission requires that housing created using the program remain affordable for low-income households for at least 99 years. Loans must be repaid within 30 years and loan recipients must begin construction within 180 days. I don't know that we have anything local on that. Fund Pierce County affordable housing projects. So the big one there, the one that SHAPE is supporting is that kind of workforce housing out in Frederickson on some property out there. And I think you're going to hear a lot more about that. Reduce affordable housing construction costs. So this is interesting. There's a House Bill 1717 that seeks to reduce the cost to construct affordable housing. These options may include changes to prevailing wage calculations, sales and use tax relief, and other local options to make the development and preservation of affordable housing more achievable. So without going through the text of that, that seems to be something that we'd probably support. Active engagement, reactive or supportive. These items are not lead priorities, but they have significant impact. SHAPE may provide testimony, communicate with legislatures or join coalitions. Construction industry workforce development, which is an item that kind of keeps coming up, and workforce development in general has been, I know in my day job, this has been something the county's worried about a lot. Mr. Branstadter's clearly well-versed in this by his previous employment. Efforts to seek to increase the number of people entering the construction industry workforce. So it's pretty general comments on there. Citing of step housing. So this would be in its current form, House Bill 1195. And remember, if you introduced a bill in the last legislative session, it carries into this next session because there's no intervening. It's still really just considered the next session. Would prohibit cities and towns from prohibiting transitional or permanent supportive housing, also known as step housing, in any zone where residential units or hotels are allowed. SHAPE opposes this approach and encourages the legislature at a minimum to allow effective jurisdictions to require step housing to be sited in zones that allow at least 6 multifamily residential units. This approach would mirror co-living housing arrangements set in HB 1998. So SHAPE is actually opposing that. So this is one that we've had discussions around, expand the senior and disabled household property tax exemption program eligibility. SHAPE supports the expansion of eligibility criteria for homeowners to access the senior and disabled household property tax exemption program, but there's no specifics. So here's another one, recreational vehicles as permanent housing units. So I'm, and this is one I'm looking at retiring, and I'm going to park in the mayor's driveway and live there. SHAPE opposes legislation to allow the siting of recreational vehicles as permanent housing units. Recreational vehicles are not constructed as permanent housing units, and relying on RVs for permanent housing risks creating substandard living conditions and diverts attention and resources away from developing safe, durable, and affordable homes that truly meet community needs. So, and I would think that we're okay with opposition to that. It strikes me as just kind of surrender, right? I mean, it doesn't talk about condition of the RVs and investments in rental assistance and eviction prevention. You're going to hear a lot more about this, I think, going forward, because you are seeing, there was an article in the News Tribune the other day about the increase in the number of evictions. SHAPE supports investments in rental assistance and eviction prevention to keep individual and families stably housed during times of financial hardship. These programs are critical tools for preventing avoidable evictions, reducing displacement, and protecting vulnerable households. And I would say, I think this is kind of where a lot of the money is going to start to move, just because if a person never does have to leave, ever get evicted, then they don't become homeless, because once they get into the homeless system, it becomes very difficult and very expensive to get them out. Capital housing investments, I'm almost done. Thank you for your patience. Will support, encourage significant capital investments in programs that fund the creation and preservation of affordable housing. These programs include the Housing Trust Fund, the Connecting Housing to Infrastructure Program, the CHIP program. The county's actually making 3 applications to the CHIP program, but it's really for new development. This is one that we supported at a SHAPE meeting a year or so ago to try to get the state to expand that to existing things like some of our mobile home parks would be help pay for sewers. And SHAPE will advocate for a funding backfill should federal home investment partnership program home funding be cut or reduced, and that may affect us. Another one, and this is probably one we should be thinking on our own, funding for pre-approved ADU designs. SHAPE encourages the legislature to create and fund a grant program for local governments to develop pre-approved ADU designs. And then local affordability housing options. SHAPE supports the creation of local affordable housing funding options to give jurisdictions the tools they need to meet community housing needs, creating or expanding local revenue sources. So it would be the same as what we were just talking about on our last one. It would probably be just local option stuff. Local option short-term rental tax and a voter-approved real estate excise time option. And then it goes on to talk about other informational kinds of things, but that's the gist of it. If there's anything that really jumps out on you, let myself or in opposition, yeah.
Mr. Branstetter?
Yeah, well, first of all, the allowing recreational vehicles to be positioned on lots with to do that is home. This was a bill that was introduced last year, and I actually testified against it. The idea being it just creates an aftermarket use for recreational vehicles that don't run anymore to be able to put them in, and it would be in places like the yard that we heard the gentleman come and tell us about, that instead of tents, the guy just have park for RVs in it. And the problem with the bill is that it would preclude cities like Lakewood from even inspecting them or denying them. The only requirement was, did they get hooked up to to water and electricity. Didn't even have to be hooked up to sewer as long as there was like a bathroom in another structure on the site to be able to go there. So I think I'm glad Shape is again opposing it, and I think we should. The other one was the one about an incentive to build affordable housing. And the bill to say that cities like Lakewood, that there would be a state level form that folks could check the blocks on, and then that the state would determine if they were exempt from having to pay sales tax on construction supplies and equipment, which is a significant part of our sales tax revenue. I think we want to look at not being supportive of that. Even though the original Shape Advisory Committee thought that was a good idea, that it would that it would serve the reducing the cost of building it, but it's a significant local revenue item to do that for all of the entities that are funded with sales tax.
Oh, Mr. Pearson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had one concern about the eviction one, and I think the city of Tacoma passed something not too long ago, and when you look at that, there's, you can't evict someone if they have kids during the school year and there's cold, so then it's like, it really is challenging if you're a landlord and it's like you have 1.5, 2 months to be able to actually execute this eviction. And, there's just kind of a lot of concerns that I have about that whole process and really having tons of regulations on when it can be done and how it's done and stuff. So that one I'd be worried, a little bit cautious with, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think we want to fall in line with what challenge they're facing in Tacoma.
Yeah, I'm reading that and of course, Councilmember Branstetter will be there. And I believe it's in person, by the way, like in DuPont. I'm reading it as investments, meaning dollars that would help these people stay in, not more restrictions, which some cities have done, which really makes things very complicated. And actually, I think you're really seeing negative impacts on affordable housing, right? From what I'm reading in the Seattle Times, actually, it's the affordable housing guys that are really losing out because people just stop paying. And so and they need cash to operate these buildings, right? And so we'll see. I believe that's what they're talking about, money, but the legislature can do anything they want. And they may find some what they think is easier solutions that they don't have to deal with, right? We have to deal with, but they don't have to.
Anything else? Are you sure? You're okay. Let's check. Councilmember Lauricella.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we are 8 minutes into our 4th hour today, I will try and be brief. Last week, I called into the Pierce County Library Systems meeting of their folks, where they reviewed some architectural drawings and options for building a library on the Tensler site, which in itself is promising, is that they're still considering that. Their structures ranged in size from 15 to 30,000 square feet. They looked at parking, they looked at open space for folks. They were all pretty promising. I look forward to hearing more as that develops and as they come up with a plan. Understanding that will probably be something that goes to a vote of the people to get money for them, which, as we talk about things that we may want to generate funds for, it's going to be a timing issue, I think, for taxpayers. So we'll have to consider that.
I think they mentioned 20 to 30 million. Is that
I
right?
think it was more than that.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I had intended to attend the Lake City Neighborhood Association meeting last week, but I wasn't able to. I did watch it afterwards online. And I just appreciate that they gave a space for a candidates forum, and gave people a chance to speak on their own behalf. So that was great. What's next? Oh, I've heard some complaints and scuttle from neighbors about some consequences of the Nyanza construction, specifically not where Nyanza hits Gravely, but where there's some ripple effects. So at Pack Highway and Bridgeport, so way out there, people are trying to go around and get through that. The light to turn from northbound on Pack Highway to westbound on Bridgeport, so going towards St. Clair. That light allows, I went through it today, 5 vehicles total per cycle.
Yeah.
The 4th vehicle's on a yellow light and the 5th vehicle's on a red light, and people are just going through that. Yeah, so I think, I don't know who controls the timing of those lights, whether it's WashDOT or the city, but if we could elevate that and get that fixed, it's becoming a problem for folks, and it becomes unsafe as people are speeding through that light to get through. It's just noticed now because there's so much more of a traffic load. That makes sense. So, all right. At the end of this week on Friday, I'll be attending the Alliance for Sustainable Climate Action, which is the Pierce County Climate Conversation Group. I'll represent the city there. That's always a fun meeting to hear what other jurisdictions are doing to address climate change. And then next week will be our semi-annual Pierce County Opioid Abatement Council meeting that I will be at. 2 more things. One kind of personal. So a shout out to the St. Clair Hospital surgical team for saving my life a month ago. I really appreciate what they did there, and they're just top-notch folks. So I would not hesitate to go back there again. I have no desire to, but if I had to, they have my full support. So thanks to those folks. And the last thing is it's that time of year, so get your flu and COVID shots. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Branstetter.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I plan to attend the ribbon cutting at American Lake Park, and on Wednesday morning, I'll be attending the South 911 board meeting to be able to go and do that. And then we will get it to look forward to the 2-week break between our meetings.
We didn't tell you about that next meeting, special meeting we're gonna. Councilmember Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a Puget Sound Regional Council coming up, and I also will be attending the ribbon cutting on Thursday, I think it is, and looking forward to next week's activities. So,
Great.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bell.
Mr. Mayor, last week I was able to attend the Tillicum Woodbrook meeting, and that was really great to have everybody there. They're very, very wanting to know more about the connector through there. So that was the main bit of conversation. So I thought that was really informative, very great. And let's see, I did also watch the Lake City meeting this week, and I thought that was that last week. Last week. So that was always great forum, great place for people to talk. I really appreciate our neighborhood meetings and everything that seems to be evolving with them, and they all seem to really be growing, whether it's a neighborhood meeting or if it's the desserts in the driveway. All of those, I think, are really beneficial for our residents and for us too. It's great to connect. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do want to say about the desserts in the driveway. I think that's the best way that we could have come up with to get the council in front of the community. So we go to them, they come to us. It's it has worked out really good. So I hope that hope that program continues. And I did attend the ribbon cutting at the chamber, the studio, the great experiences for small businesses to go in and make a video all on their own
Oh, mhm.
and to share it. It's less expensive, and people that have the technology, it really works. So just wanted to share that. But my most exciting thing I wanted to talk about tonight is my civic leader. I'm so excited I can't even talk about it. The civic leadership tour, that was absolutely amazing. I have been involved with the Honorary Commander Program since before I even came onto the council. And I've been on many of the civic leadership tours, but this one was top notch. We flew into Denver, Colorado, and we toured the Air Force Academy. I can't, I'm not gonna cry. Some of the things that those young people are facing is just, it's just so heartbreaking and yet heartwarming. This, one of the stories that they told was this, it was a young man, he was homeless, he had no place to go, only had the clothes on his back. He went to the recruiters and said, I don't want to be a statistic. I want to do something with my life. And he said, I have nothing. They took him in, they gave him the clothing that he needed. They ran him through the test, so he qualified to become a soldier. He went through the process, and he's off now doing great things and is really happy and appreciative. And I thought, what a wonderful way for young men and women to be able to have some way, some path to take to. It was amazing. So it was really heartwarming. We went and they took us through the whole process that they go through. And where most of the people that went into the military first, they had 6 months basic training. 7 weeks is what they're doing it in now.
Wow.
And they come out, they had a graduation of 500, it was over 500, it was 549 people that graduated, 22 from foreign countries. And they also became a citizen of the United States and a soldier in the Air Force. So I thought that was exciting. We flew to Kelly Field in San Antonio, Texas on the KC-46, the air refueling tank. And that was very nice. I think that pilot would like to erase that landing from his record completely.
Uh-oh, a little bouncy.
We had a 4-star general on board, so that was quite interesting. But those young men and women who choose not to be a part of the statistics and drifting into a destination found a place that they can go, and if they're sincere and they do follow through, and they say they have very few dropouts, they make it through. That is the largest area. I think it was 192,000 acres, because you can go into that area and any destination that you have in mind, there's a facility there for you to learn, to participate, get the training that you need. We ended up at dinner on the Riverwalk. That was exciting. And then I came home. But I just wanted to share because that is, if you have an opportunity to get in, I hope someone will from the council be able to work with the Honorary Commander Program, because it is rewarding and it's something that with me going, the local is all about going to their functions. But the global is getting out and learning what other cities are doing with their, so I'm going to be meeting with the base commander to see, and some of the organizations that are supporting our airmen, to see if LMCC can even become a part of their Christmas turkey drop and the hand grenades and stuff like that. So it's all about learning what we can do to make our airmen more comfortable. And it's really heartwarming. So I hope, even if you don't get to join the program, attend some of their events and learn what it's all about. It's amazing. And like I said, I've been there over 16 years and I'm still excited. So that's it.
Well, thanks for attending. That sounds like a great,
It was awesome.
great deal. Busy week. I was at the Pierce Transit Board of Commissioners meeting on last Monday. And as you might imagine, they're trying to continue their strategic planning process and educate their constituents in their service area about the need to get to their full funding authorization, which is 9/10. They're at 6/10 right now. They're the only agency, similar transit agency, that is not at their fully funded level, and it impacts service hours, and like everyone, costs are increasing. So the board is being tasked with checking in with their constituents and their council and to determine whether there's enough energy and enthusiasm to consider going to the ballot potentially in November 2026. So next November for the ballot proposition. So I'll get more feedback and information for you as we go along, but it'll certainly probably come to this council sometime next year after I'm gone and whoever else is appointed to serve on the Transit Commission to ultimately consider having a resolution in support. So that's something that we'll have to consider down the road. But it was a good meeting and they're doing good work and they're certainly investing as much as they can in servicing the needs of transit and transit riders throughout the community. Went to the 9/11 ceremony on Thursday. I thought that was well, or on the 11th. I don't think it was Thursday, but it was it Thursday? Yeah, it was Thursday last week. So that was well done by West Pierce Fire. And our police chief was there as well. And so it was a really good ceremony and many of us were present and they did a fantastic job of helping all of us remember the impact of 9/11. Tonight we had the public art reception out in the gallery and it was really well attended. The Arts Commission did a fabulous job as well. There were a lot of people there. It was unfortunate that we had such a tight timeline, so we really couldn't mix and mingle with a lot of the dignitaries that were there from the Korean community, but they really appreciated the fact that we hosted it, that we put on a nice event for many of their folks in the Korean community that really appreciate their artists. And so kudos to us for doing that. And then this week we got a lot of stuff going on, so I will try to do what I can. I don't believe is the Nourish, that lunch is tomorrow. Who all signed up for that? Do we know? I'll double check with you, Brian. I think I may have it down on my calendar, but I know it's on our calendar. I'll double check on that. And then I will try to do the Fort Stolican Park Neighborhood Association as well tomorrow evening. And then we've got on the 18th, I may or may not be able to make the American League ribbon cutting. So as long as we have a few folks there, we should be good on that. Because Mr. Boki and I have to dial in, I think, on the Pierce County Regional Council if it's going. So we'll double check on that as well. Yep. That's all I have. Thanks for the good work tonight, Mr. Russell and staff. I thought it was a good meeting. Anything else for